Can I introduce our guest? Well, just want to welcome everybody back this morning. Our first order of business, our new division engineer for Division 5, Tyler Benton, has been kind enough to join us. He's brought with him our new assistant division engineer, Christina Pearson.
Deputy.
I'm sorry?
Deputy.
Deputy, excuse me. Let me get the title right. Apologize. Well, we welcome you here. Thank you for coming in. And I think the goal is to, they're going to introduce themselves and give a little presentation on a few things that are going on. But I think Tyler and I talked about really trying to have a dialogue with the board and our division engineer's office here. So we'll just turn it over to you, Tyler, and welcome.
Okay, well, thank you, Andy, and thank you to the board for having us here today. I don't have a presentation prepared today, but I've got some notes, so if you'll indulge me, we can kind of go through things and then open it up for questions. When Andy first invited us here today, he asked that we share kind of our perspective on Division 5 and provide an update on the upcoming measurement rules. But before we do that, an introduction may be helpful. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Tyler Benton. I'm the new Division 5 division engineer. Many of you know James Heath, who was most recently in this role and who retired in the new year. By way of background, I'm originally from Eastern Colorado. I grew up on a farm and ranch near Burlington. My career started in water resources after graduating Colorado School of Mines and landing my first job in Limit Springs, working for Grand River Consulting. I then worked for a time at Wilson Water Group, or recently working at Colorado Springs Utilities. As some of you may know, the recent DWR loss of both James Heath and Caleb Foy, the prior deputy DE, combined with an existing vacancy for the assistant DE position, has resulted in a complete turnover of leadership at the Division 5 office. Christina Pearson joins us today, and I'm very excited to have her on board as the new deputy DE and to give her an opportunity to introduce herself.
Hi, I'm Christina Pearson. Obviously, I just started a month ago of the division. I've been in Glenwood a long time, most recently working at SGM as Water Resources Engineer Consulting, and I'm very happy to be on board at the state
now. I'd also like to share that Craig Bruner is our new assistant DE. Craig is a longtime employee of Division 5, recently working as a lead hydrographer. Like Christina, myself, and Anastasia Braneskia, the litigation augmentation engineer, we're all learning our new positions and appreciate the patience of the water community as it's come up to speed. I'd also like to take a minute to thank James Heath for his dedication to the state of Colorado and wish him well in retirement. James has done an incredible job during his time with DWR and has worked hard to develop documentation and tools for our staff to be successful. In addition, Jason Ullman, state engineer in Denver, DWR team, have all been a very helpful providing support to our new staff. As for my plan to lead Division 5, when I applied for the job, I knew it would be both a challenging and an important position serving the state of Colorado. I look forward to working with River District and all water users to better understand perspectives within the Colorado River Basin. I view the Division 5 office role, first and foremost, as consistent with DWR's mission to administer the waters of the state, maximize lawful beneficial use, and provide information about water resources to public. I understand that there may be some apprehension, particularly from this audience, with regard to my background. However, I'm committed to leading Division 5 and serving as a neutral umpire of the river, calling balls and strikes, treating all water users equally. I also know that the pending Shoshone water rights change case is of special concern to this board and water users across the state. Some of you may be aware that in my previous role at Colorado Springs Utilities, I was involved with analyses of CWCB's proposed acquisition of the Shoshone water rights for in-stream flow purposes. In my opinion, my previous work does not create an actual conflict of interest, prohibiting my participation in case number 25 CW 3177 as division engineer. However, because I testified on behalf of my former employer at the September 2025 CWCB hearing, I wish to avoid any perception of impropriety regarding my new role as division engineer. Therefore, I'm voluntarily excluding myself from status conferences, analyses, and decision-making with respect to DWR's participation in this case. Christina Pearson will represent Division 5 in all meetings and litigation decisions. Moving on to measurement rules, I'd like to share a few updates there. As you may know, the State Engineer's Office began developing measurement rules and regs on the West Slope in 2021 with Division 6. Final rules were decreed in January of 2024, and Division 6 is now working with water users to bring diversion structures into compliance. Division 7 was next in line with their process beginning in 2023. Final rules were decreed in Division 7, Water Court in June of 25, and Division 7 is currently working with water users to bring diversion structures into compliance. In 2025, Division 4 filed proposed measurement rules in Water Court. The Water Court process is underway there. And now for Division 5, we're the last West Slope division to work through measurement rules. This effort kicked off in 2025 with 6 public stakeholder meetings led by State Engineer Jason Ullman, Andy Nesovich representing the Attorney General's office, and supported by James Heath from Division 5. Those meetings were held in October and November of last year. The State Engineer's Office received written comments from 7 entities and is currently working in cooperation with the Attorney General's Office and Division 5 to review those comments. A list of all comments and associated State Engineer's Office responses will be released to the public in the coming weeks. So those are my quick updates. We're happy to talk through and for any questions or comments you may have.
Well, Tyler, I would just say I appreciate your comments on Shoshone and really very much appreciate your willingness to think about the perceptions and things like that. And thank you for doing that. I just want to mention that Tyler is a longstanding member of the Glenwood Springs community. He in fact put together, helped organize on behalf of the Historical Society an evening chat about the history of the Shoshone Power Plant. And as a community member, Tyler is fantastic. It always made me a little curious about the Colorado Springs connection, but I will say I think Tyler's got his heart in the right place. So thank you.
Well, thanks, Andy. Yeah, it's important for me to start this roll off on good footing with other users across the state. So that is where I'm at.
So this is your opportunity, board members, to ask questions, have dialogue.
Yeah, thank you so much, Tyler. My question is, at the county level, if we're mandated to introduce measurement devices, whose responsibility is it to pay for this?
It's a great question. So the water right owner is tasked with ensuring that their diversion structures meet Colorado water law, including the upcoming measurement rules. So the burden is on the water user. I will also mention that the state of Colorado has received federal funding to assist water users with the costs associated with any upgrades for those measurement devices.
Thank you. That's good to know.
That funding is available through the CWCB. It is currently only available in Division 4 and 7,
Correct.
but will be available after the rulemaking process takes place here, right?
Yeah, I believe that, there might be a waiting list that they're creating, so water users are welcome to, I think, coordinate with SGF. They're the managing entity, to get on that list. And my understanding is that between the 4 West Slope divisions, they're initially, reserving 25% of those funds for each division. To the extent the other 3 divisions don't utilize their funds, then more money could be available.
And just to refresh the board's memory on our funding, we do not, at the direction of this board, we do not fund measuring devices. There's been a long-standing discussion about that. Specifically, our former Gunnison County representative believed and convinced the board at the time that, you know, most of our water users in highly regulated areas have had to put measurement devices in at their own expense, and didn't think it was appropriate for this district to spend money subsidizing others who are just finally getting up to speed. You all are free to change your perspective on that, but that is our standing policy.
Dr. Callen. Sorry. That was a great follow-up. You guys kind of answered my questions about the measurement rules and the payments. I do have a question. I'm in Division 4, so this doesn't really apply to you, but maybe you can answer this on behalf of the state. It seems like there's an opportunity to modernize how we measure water and water use. There's quite a bit of money that's available for this. And in Division 4 anyway, it seemed like we're just going right back to, you have to put a partial flume in, feels very much like 2002. Not much has changed. It seems like we have an opportunity to use even remote satellite monitoring to, you know, real-time measure consumptive rather than just how much water did you put through a flume. And I understand the rationale of making water users pay for it, but if there's something new and improved that can allow a water commissioner to pull up a cell phone and check the ditch from, you know, the office and save the state money, but also become more accountable for our water management. Big picture, is that something Division 5 is considering?
You know, that's a good comment. From our perspective, the rules provide flexibility for each division engineer to apply discretion. Every system's going to be unique, right? And so the measurement rules are going into place for, in my view, kind of 2 primary reasons. One is to ensure accurate administration, and the other is to ensure we have information on water use. That protects the water right owner, and that helps the state get a full picture water use. So with the administration in mind, depending on the needs of those individual ditch companies or water right owners, you know, there may be a situation where telemetry is needed or maybe not, but that's something that'll be worked out on an individual basis with the water user.
Okay.
I think it's also important to keep in mind, you know, the intention is not to overburden the water user with unnecessary expenses.
Sure.
It's not a one size fits all.
Thank you.
Sonia Macy's, Delaware County Commissioner, but new to this board, previously worked on the measurement rules in Division 6. So I'm really interested to see how this can go for you. One of the questions I have 2 questions. One is just what is the percentage of folks who are using them already? Do we have people who've already done this work and they're, you know, are you going to have a really heavy lift as far as the number of the population? And then the second question is, in addition to expense that was mentioned previously, people were very concerned in Division 6 about the availability of devices and just being able to get their hands on them. So I don't know if we will have a similar situation in 5.
Great questions. So in regard to your first question about the number of structures that need to come into compliance, Division 5, as most folks are well aware, you know, we're under call most years. whether it be on the individual tributaries or main stem. And so many of the existing structures, diversion structures do have measuring devices. Below Cameo Call and Mesa County, I think there are some users that are not accustomed to annual administration. And so perhaps in that area, there will be a bigger lift. To your point about availability of measurement devices, I don't have a good understanding of, or I haven't heard that concern prior. Of course, I'm brand new. But yeah, that's something that that we'll be aware of. The state's not prescribing a specific measuring device type for any water user, as long as that device is designed to be accurate in its measurements and is installed properly. So again, there's some built-in flexibility.
Ms. Jovis?
Mr. Benson, yesterday we had a really good conversation and presentation from our staff on our joint funding agreement for water quality and quantity measurement and monitoring. And it was brought up in that discussion that it would be great to have the state's participation in funding those sites, which the state heavily uses because of the increase in cost that we are experiencing related to all of those sites. Do you think that is something that could be brought up as a conversational piece with the state engineer?
Personally, I'm not as familiar with that, and so that's something we'll have to get back to you on. And yeah, happy to have that conversation.
And Tyler, I wonder if we can maybe have we'll have our staff reach out to you. Rebecca and Raquel run our joint funding agreement with the USGS. I think you might find it interesting what we do, how much we're spending every year, and we have some local partners who help us. I think there are a number of the gauges that we support that you guys utilize on a regular basis to administer the delivery. And so it would be helpful, I think, to understand what we're putting into that. It is for our small district, it's one of our bigger line items in our budget every year. Just to give you that background.
I can appreciate that.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming today. Welcome to your new job. Drinking through a fire hose, I'm sure. Tom Graham from Moffett County, somewhere in Division 6. And we are complying with the measurement rules. But there's a sense, and I'm kind of asking this as a question, there's a sense that once we've complied, that it's sort of a moving landscape, and that we haven't heard this, it's just the sense among us water users that, okay, we've complied for today, but those measurement rules are continually there's a lot of ambiguity about whether this is it, we've complied and now that's done and we can put it behind us. But next year, we're gonna need instantaneous readings on some measuring devices, we're gonna need this, we're gonna need that. So there's a little bit of concern of, it's still an open game. And do you have that sense?
Thanks for sharing your perspective. I have not heard of any additional requirements, like we've mentioned before. Each ditch system is unique, and to the extent that the structures are administrable, I don't see additional requirements being imposed on the water user. But that's my understanding today. Yeah, I'm not aware of anything else coming to the pipeline.
We might just be worrying needlessly because as Sonia said, it's been a big lift for many users to get in
Fair.
compliance, and we have these deadlines coming up by spring. We've received our letters that if you're not in compliance, you won't be burned this year. And which is fine. I mean, I know you have to have deadlines or nothing ever gets done, but maybe it's just because of the ambiguity among with division engineers being able to make their own interpretations of some things that worries us.
Okay. Thanks for sharing your concern.
I'm wondering if there is any avenue with the water engineering process for well permits Is there any avenue for restricting well permits to control development in areas that are already really low on water? I'm from Pitkin County, Francisco Cover, and our Crystal River Valley is the Crystal River is very low on water on a regular basis, and it's only going to get worse this year. But if we can't by rights deny people development rights, but I'm wondering if the water engineer can stop issuing well permits when there isn't any water.
You know, that's a valid concern. We hear from other water users and other portions of our basin about similar issues. And I guess I view our role as carrying out the existing statutes that exist. So for individuals who qualify for a well permit, then we process that. But I think that's an important consideration as we move forward.
Yeah, it would be really great if we could look at the places where the well permits are bureaucratically allowed, but the Crystal River Aquifer is really has a lot of demands on it. And at some point, the well drilling is gonna make the river almost a puddle. So if you could just sort of keep that in mind, that this is one avenue for protecting the water in Colorado is to stop development in places where the well permits are detrimental to the flows of the river would be really great.
I'm not sure we have as much oversight of, local land approval processes, but regarding the issuance of well permits, that is definitely something that is in our wheelhouse.
So is that a legislative change that would be needed for you to be able to look at supply rather than, what you call it, bureaucratic eligibility?
To be honest, I probably need to do a little more research there to get up to speed. So, yeah, happy to have further conversations.
That'd be great. I'll get back with you in about 6 months.
Well, looks like we're maybe all in, all done.
Okay.
Thank you so much for coming.
I would maybe just clarify the last couple of questions. It is not this board's request that the state take over local land use jurisdiction.
Nor mine.
Okay, I just want to make sure there wasn't any kind of confusion.
I, as a commissioner, am responsible for land use
Okay.
development, but it would be nice if we had some support from the water world in terms of restricting development in areas that are basically water endangered. Pretty hard right now, their current governor, because he's really in favor of more development everywhere. So anyway, I just wanted to plant that idea to see if it can go anywhere as a Pitkin County Commissioner, not as a director of the River District. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Director Jacober, in some of my previous work, I know that I would work with the county, so the counties have to do the land use approval process. And so if you subdivide a property or if you're looking for development, part of the county's review or whatever authority that's reviewing those, they can work with DWR office. And it's not typically the Division 5 office or Division 4 offices. It's usually in the state or admin office in Denver that has a review period. So they would look to make sure that you have enough water supplies for that development. And so I think there is some review, but it's typically outside of their office for that review.
Okay.
But let me do some more research on that and I can get back to you.
Thanks, Brendan.
And coordinate with these guys as well.
I was placed on the hot seat with this one, in my role at the division. In a situation in which there was a mobile home that was within a city of Silver Spring city limits and it was on a well. And it needed to be re-permitted and the city basically very clearly asked the division, can you deny them their well permit because of the fact that they are within municipal water service territory? And the answer was hard no. So I think, I think that there's probably a whole lot of work that would need to be done in order to have that happen, just based on past experience. I think it does get into that slippery slope question about land use that we all grapple with. State versus county, et cetera.
Yeah.
But love to talk to you more about this question because it's fascinating.
That'd be great. I did ask Mr. Ullman about it at the water meetings in Denver last year, I think. And he didn't want to go there at all.
Jason is pretty smart. So, well, we really want to thank you both for being here and I really appreciate and look forward to a good working relationship.
Absolutely.
Yes, well, thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Great. Mr. President, with your permission, I'd like to turn to try to finish up the remaining general managers items, and then we can turn to directors' concerns after that.
What I thought.
Excellent. All right. The next item on the general manager's report is in the Aspinall Unit Subordination Agreement report. It is contained in your packet, and staff was not intending to do any presentation on this matter, just has that, we have that in there as an informational item for you. If to answer questions. Caleb's here. Oh,
I'm available.
Yeah.
Else on our way.
okay. All right. Seeing no questions, we'll keep going. Next item is a strategic plan implementation update from Amy Moyer and Audrey Turner that is in the board packet as well. That update seems to speak for itself, but if the board has questions, Amy and Audrey are available for each of those questions. All right, no questions. We will move on to proposed changes in the employment policies and procedural guidelines. Audrey Turner, our Chief of Operations, is here to present on that.
Perhaps the highlight of the board meeting. No, thank you. So the board periodically reviews the employment guidelines for changes, if benefit changes are made or laws are enacted that we need to comply with. And it has been a couple of years since we've had that. And we also took this opportunity to engage an outside employment law counsel to review the guidelines, as it had been really internally handled since it was developed before my time. And so he took a fine-tooth comb to those guidelines and proposed a lot of red lines. And I just want to clarify that in practice, we have been complying with the law as like the Colorado Family Healthy Workplace Act was brought into law. We made sure that we were complying with that with our existing leave policies, the equal employment opportunity, family, the family and medical leave insurance. So all of those things we've been aware of, we've been complying with, but he did recommend a number of red lines just to make sure our language in our employment guidelines was consistent and compliant with the law. So the equal employment opportunity, request for accommodations, equal pay for equal work, the leave of absence sections. He also made some recommendations to the employment conduct and our dispute resolution procedures, just to sort of come in line with our current organizational structure and our practices. And so I won't walk through all of those changes, but I'm happy to discuss any questions or concerns that you have. The red lines and some version are included in your packet, which added 150 pages or so to the packet this quarter. But I do also have two substantive changes and recommendations to our benefits that I'd like to talk through. But I'm happy to pause here to see if there's any questions on any of the red lines and those law sections. And maybe also I'll just clarify that I did include in these red lines the language to reflect the changes that were approved by the board in 2025 regarding the removal of contributions to the retirement health savings plan and putting those into the other retirement plan, and also the tuition reimbursement policy. So those red lines are included in here, but they were already previously approved by the board in 2025. So I'll pause here.
I would say that the vast majority of the red line changes in that manual are related to just complying with state and federal law changes. And as Audrey said, we've already been complying with them, but we wanted to get them into the manual. Our employment council felt that it was important to get them in there. It's not really a choice of the district whether or not we comply with those laws. Frankly, we do comply with them and we have to and we will. So, but if there are specific questions about those changes, we're happy to address. Okay.
Okay, so moving on to the other two changes that I have included in my memo and are also included in these red lines. The first is for the board's consideration is a recommendation to change the vacation accrual schedule. So some of the board may recall a couple of years ago when we did our last salary survey, the consultant made a number of recommendations to sort of encourage and ensure the competitiveness of the River District to attract and retain the best employees that we can, which I think we've done a very good job and want to continue to do so. And so over the last couple of years, I've been looking at those, and one of the policies that we have that I am recommending for a change is the vacation accrual schedule. And I will say in my review, and I looked at other local government employers in our region, the state of Colorado and others. And really the amount of vacation that we accrue to our employees is competitive. And so I'm not recommending a change there, but where we were lagging is in the schedule and when those rate changes change. So our current schedule, which was developed I think in 1997, when the board originally formalized the vacation schedule, is that the first increment you start accruing at higher, but then you don't get to the next change for 6 years of employment. And then after that, 12 years and then 18 years. And so yay me, I made it to the 18 years and got the final bump of accrual. But really that is lagging in the market, and some are making annual incremental increases. Others are at 3 to 5 years, but certainly not 18 years to get the maximum vacation accrual. And so what I'm recommending is that we tighten that schedule a little bit with the first increase at 3 years, after 3 years of service, and then 5-year increments after that. So after 8 years and at 13 years, you would get to the maximum vacation accrual amount. And then also, one of the things that we have discussed in the past is the ability to credit service. For when employees are coming from a career that they've been at for, 10, 15, 20 years already. It's pretty difficult to come over to a new job and start at the lowest amount of vacation accrual. And so we had previously allowed the general manager or general counsel to credit up to 6 years of service. And we're recommending that they can now credit up to 8 years of service from the vacation accrual standpoint. And so those are the two changes that and this is the red line is included in your memo and in the packet, or in the, the revision is in your memo and the red lines are in the packet for what that accrual change is. So I'm happy to answer any questions on that one, or I can also move to the second recommendation change.
My question is about if you don't take your days off, how much can you apply for money to compensate you for those days?
So we do not have any opportunity to cash out on vacation. However, if you have more than the maximum accrual amount at the end of the year, then you get paid out 50% of the value of those hours. And it used to be into the retirement health savings plan. And we had talked about that last year, and now it's just a cash payout. So you can't opt to do a vacation payout. Currently, it is something that other entities do, but it is not something that we have done in the past or are currently recommending.
And I would say that I would not support a cash payout option for employees. We provide paid time off to employees because we want them to take it. And our employees do better if they're not burned out. And I try to be an excellent role model for our employees by taking my vacation. By the way, just so the board recognizes, when those of you who are on the board at the time I was hired may remember, I actually negotiated with the board for that increased vacation, just recognition of my longstanding career. And so I think this policy, the board varied from what the general manager was able to do for me. We're now asking for that ability to vary for the other employees. That's really trying to treat everybody equally and fairly. So
Yeah, the flip of that, we do the paid time off and it's very expensive for us.
we do now, upon separation of employment, we are required employees their paid time off. Not their sick time, just the vacation, accrued vacation.
The accrued.
Sorry.
Scott?
I'm trying to figure out how to shut that damn thing off.
Throw it.
Yeah, which direction? So explain to me now, so I'm confused. If we have somebody who works for the city of Glenwood and they come over and take a job here, they get to take, let's say they worked there 12 years, the city of Glenwood, they automatically get 12 years accumulated here? What, explain how that works.
Yeah, so what that is just gives authorization to the general manager or general counsel as they are hiring to include that in the compensation of the new employee, but it is by no means guaranteed. And it is not a one-for-one crediting. It has just been, we have hired, many of our employees are advanced in their careers, and when they're looking at our package or salary and benefits and things like that, vacation is one of those elements. And so when they have been at a career for 15 years or something and are accruing 2 days a month and they go down to 1 day a month, that's seen as a detriment. And so it's something that we want to have as a recruitment tool, and is the ability to credit years of service. But it
There's
is
no
not,
automatic.
yeah, it's not automatic.
That's good, but
And in fact, we don't generally offer that in our initial job offer. We have had several employees ask, after negotiating the package, they'll come back and say, hey, can I have a bump in my vacation schedule? And at that point, if they have the experience and they're a desired employee, we would consider bumping it to some degree.
I think we'd have to be awful careful, starting with protected classes and then going from there to the morale when all of a sudden the new person in town gets more vacation time because they.
No, Audrey's still pissed off at me for having more vacation.
Because I put in my 18 years, so.
Vacation. But you get the.
Yeah,
what I'm saying.
I do.
Thank you.
Any more questions on the vacation? I'll move to the recommendation. So the second recommendation is a minor modification to our donated sick leave policy. So we have, and it is not frequently used, but it is a great benefit for people when they do need it for donated sick leave. And the current requirement is that you have to deplete all of your paid time off categories. So vacation, sick leave, comp time or PPL, holiday time, down to 40 hours in total before you're eligible for donated sick leave. And then for the people who are donating it, there's a number of requirements as far as the minimum, and we're not recommending a change there. But what we have found is that for employees who are in need of donated sick leave and you deplete all of your time down to only 40 hours, it puts you in somewhat of a precarious situation moving forward. So some of these have been for parental leave it has been the more frequent use of this time. And most certainly when you're coming back and you have a young child or a baby that is in care, they're going to get sick and you're going to need to have some sort of, it's helpful to have more time accrued for those other sick leave needs, or the ability to take a vacation at some point in the year. And so what we're recommending is that for the employee to be eligible for donated sick leave, that they are allowed to keep 40 hours of accrued sick leave and 40 hours of other combined types of leave and be eligible for donated sick leave. So really, it's an increase in allowing them to have 80 hours of other leave and still options of sick leave.
Sonia?
Audrey, what is the sentiment of staff around having to ask for days leave? It seems kind of awkward, and I know the district has made some changes in terms of expanding support for daycare and childcare and stuff like that. Can you explain what we've done to kind of help with that?
Yeah, I will say for sure, one of the biggest benefits and the for employees has been the increase in that paid parental leave. Which, 5 years ago, there was no paid parental leave, and so it was only the approved using accrued sick leave, and so it puts employees in a tougher situation. So thank you to the board for supporting that paid parental leave. It really is infrequently used. And so it is the way that, because it is kind of awkward or uncomfortable to ask for support in that way. And so we typically facilitate that request for the employee, usually through myself and our accounting team to ask for those donations. It's completely voluntary and anonymous in the way that we've done that. But I mean, yes, the district and this board has been very supportive, and I recognize that it feels like I come back and ask for a lot of benefit changes, but I appreciate the support. But we have helped, and the daycare contribution that you're talking about has also been helpful. It's, it is a bit of a drop in the bucket in the cost of what childcare is in our area, but anything helps. And so that has been helpful. But there's also been other times where it may be a surgery or something like that, that an employee needs some donated sick leave. It is pretty infrequent.
Okay. Motion.
We do need a motion. Motion to approve the proposed modifications to the employment policies and procedural guidelines.
So moved.
Second.
Who made the motion?
Macy's.
Macy's,
Second by
second.
Jacober. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, Kathy.
Kathy Taylor Henry, excuse me.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Thanks for
Thank you.
that.
Thank you, Audrey.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Audrey.
Last item on the general manager's report are my goals and objectives. They're provided in the packet. I will just say I try to keep my goals at 5 or 6 per year. It is not reflective of everything I put my fingers on by any means. I just ask staff. But it is, I try to keep them concise. It could revise them significantly to try to comply or model our new strategic plan this year. And so you'll see that those changes. Happy to take comments and direction from the board on those. It reminds me that the first time I did these, 8 years ago, presented my goals and objectives, and one of the board members raised their hand and said, "Well, Andy, you don't have anything in here about Shoshone." So I then put something in here about Shoshone, and that's been quite a bit of work. But I think happy to get comments right now at the meeting, but also feel free at any time to comment offline and help me make sure that I'm properly focused. Seeing no comments, I think we're on to the next item, number 13, the director's updates and concerns.
Okay. Well, I guess.
When do we hear from Shannon?
Oh, I am so sorry. Shannon, come on up. This is my problem. Thank you. Shannon Wattis, I mentioned this yesterday, and I think some of you had the pleasure of meeting Shannon last night have a seat, please. At dinner, but Shannon is the new executive director for the Water Center at Colorado Mesa University. I asked if she would just say who she is, introduce herself, and a couple quick minutes here so that the board can get to know Shannon and see the benefits of our CFP program in real life.
Okay, thank you, Andy. Hi, everyone. I'm Shannon Wattis. I'm the new executive director of the San Diego Health and Water Center. Thank you for the intro, Andy. I first off just wanted to thank you all for the support with the grant that made my position possible. and also strengthening the partnership with the River District and CMU. It's a really exciting moment for the Water Center. I'm really excited to lead the center towards more sustainability, work on organizational development, and we're going to go through a strategic planning process this year, which I know you all just went through. That really excites me because that's just my world, and I'm excited for that. And I think it's going to really help the Water Center with not only fundraising, but helping us establish our North Star. I've lived in Fruta for the last 14 years, working on various water issues, both as a congressional aide, as a nonprofit leader, and most recently as a consultant and facilitator. So I have a pretty wide background of bringing different skill sets to the table, and yeah, I will be up to any questions or comments that you may have.
I do want to just say, Shannon, I'm very excited to have Shannon on board. Both myself and Director Chandler Henry served at the request of CMU on the search committee or on the interview committee for the position, and Shannon truly was a shining star in that. So we're excited to have her. Russ George is also on that committee, as were President Marshall and Derek Wagner from the university. So again, we're very excited to have Shannon on board.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Now, sorry, we're on to your guys' director's concerns.
Well, I guess we're gonna do the director's concerns. The easiest way for us to do this, I guess, is to go around the table. So, Mr. Martinez, would you like to start off?
Sure. Before I get to the Summit County, and everybody's gonna have a lot of the same discussion today, given the conditions out there. But I just wanted to take a step back real quickly to the CWCB meeting where we scored a big win. I just need to, I guess, there's been good articles, there's been great memos, good news articles on this, and it's great, good celebration, but you had to be in the room to really get the full impact about how well our staff did and how well our the others that were testifying on our behalf were. It gives you a whole new perspective on just how well prepared we were. Our staff anticipated the questions, answered questions quickly and easily for the CWCB board. I think Andy mentioned yesterday, we had a couple quick caucuses and things where about 30 of us were running around in different rooms. It was really a good deal. And I see Bruce there, Andy and Peter, and where's Jason?
Right there.
Our guys did a wonderful job in this thing. And I guess I just wanted to let you know that there really is another level to this whole thing that you only could get by being there. And I'm not trying to rub it in for those that weren't there, but it was a great experience being there that day and watching it. Normally, 8-hour meetings are not my kind of deal, but it was 8 hours of pretty intense listening, and it was fun. And of course, the outcome was great. So our guys did even better than maybe you even know. So that's it for that. In terms of Summit County, we're having the same issues everyone else is having. The snow has been, I think it's even been less in Summit County. We seem to be getting missed by everything. Thank God for snowmaking. The skiers wouldn't be doing anything. Vail Resorts reported on a kind of on a national basis for all their areas. They were down 20% in skier visits. I don't know how that applies to Breckenridge or Summit County or Vail itself, but I gotta say that's probably a number that's close. Haven't seen the town of Breckenridge's or any of the towns sales tax receipts. It's a couple months lag even for those who self-collect. But we'll see here soon we're in November. We'll see fairly soon what the December numbers are, and they're not going to be there's got to be some big numbers, big hits. So that is a big concern, and of course now the discussions at some of the meetings I attend are already turning to summer, and what's the lake level going to be, and what's going to happen there. So it's I guess it's kind of a mini panic going on in terms of the season. So about all I have to report. I haven't really seen a lot of the elected officials lately, but I know there's great concern about what's happening. You're up.
Yeah, well, obviously it's similar in Pitkin. There was a little bit of a concern. Most of that water returns to the watershed. I mean, a lot of it sublimates, there's no question about that from the snow surface, but so they are making snow and but the big news for us is related to a visit that we had up on Independence Pass. Brendan was there and he and I were talking to the Twin Lakes guy about shares in Twin Lakes and are there any for sale and what's the price? So just sort of screwing around in this conversation. Wasn't very serious, but I took it back to our board quite a few times and we pursued it and we hired a company called Westwater, which is like a brokerage company, and they found shares of Twin Lakes that were actually for sale and we bought them. And so we bought 60 shares of Twin Lakes Water, and then the owner of that also had 34 shares of Fountain Mutual, so we had to buy that too. They wouldn't separate them. So it's the Twin Lakes shares are equivalent to about 50 acre feet per year out of Twin Lakes. And you know, our concern initially, which is showing you why I wasn't at the first few exec sessions with you guys after I was appointed, was because we were concerned about the flows in the Upper Roaring Fork being affected by Cameo Call not coming on if the water was continually coming through Shoshone. And so we've historically, Pitkin has been concerned about flows in the Upper Roaring Fork, and that's caused some of the tension that Andy mentioned yesterday between Pitkin and the River District. So this is obviously going to help with the flows in the Upper Roaring Fork. We have to do some work to figure out when it's going to be released. Obviously not when the Cameo Call is on. And there are some stipulations that it has to get down into the main stem, I think, at least to Dotsero, if I'm not mistaken. So we got to figure out how to shepherd that water all the way down there.
Quebec.
Quebec, not Dotsero. That would go upstream.
That would.
Yeah.
Pretty cool.
And so, you know, we'll be working probably with the River District on how to shepherd that water down there and also how to unload some of the Fountain Mutual shares. I don't know what we're gonna do about that.
Where is that?
You know where Fountain Valley is?
Mhm.
I think it's
Down there.
over in that area.
So we're looking at a TMD filing, bring it this way.
Good idea.
Well, if you take it that way, then we bring it back.
And anyway, it was really exciting and it could solve quite a few of our problems and
That's smart.
didn't really see it coming.
How many acre feet did you get?
What?
How many acre feet of water is that many shares?
It's about 50 acre feet. It wasn't cheap. It's costing us $6.5 million. Healthy Rivers and Streams will be paying for that. They have a pretty good balance. You know, they are a special district in Pitkin, so they get their own tax money. They don't have that right now, so our general fund's gonna pay it right now, and then we'll figure out how to make that right. We close on April 3rd. It's under contract now. So this is like the first public announcement. So
Cool.
pretty exciting.
Yeah, we're very excited and looking forward to partnering with Pitkin County, to make sure that we figure out how to help you use that.
That would be great.
You and Brendan should hang out with these folks more often.
Yeah, really. But the company that we worked with does think that's it. They don't think there's any more out there. Because we asked just, you know, is it likely that there's any more shares out there somewhere? They don't think there's.
Ms. Chandler.
All right, Eagle County, yeah, same concerns, of course, and I did bring something interesting. I always meet with Eagle River Water and Sand, Upper Eagle Water Authority and Eagle County the week before our quarterly board meetings. And the water providers, the authority and the Water and Sand District, are implementing what they're calling a water shortage protocol. So they're getting away from the term drought because drought is constant and forever, it seems. And they're calling it water shortage, and they've got about 5 different indicators, like the drought monitor classification, the snowpack, the stream flow, and they've got different levels attached to those. And if it hits those target levels, then they are implementing water shortage. And what that means for their users is a reduction in outdoor watering ability. So knew their board should be approving that at their next meeting, but I thought that was interesting, and I brought their criteria if anyone is interested in taking a look at that.
Is that just watering on Metro water or?
It's yes, yeah. The other thing I wanted to talk about, and I was thinking about this low snowpack and thinking about the shortages in the Colorado River, and we talked about it in our information and outreach meeting this morning. And it's when we think about the upper basin taking shortages, we usually think about flowing water, like irrigation and head gates getting shut off because there isn't enough water. But I was thinking yesterday on the way down, we're taking a shortage right now because of no snow. And all the resorts don't have snow to operate. That means the restaurants, the hotels, the construction workers, everything is getting hit in the economy because of the water shortages we are receiving right now in the upper basin and in the Colorado mountains. And I don't know if that's a helpful messaging thing. I think it's really difficult for the lower basin to imagine water shortages because they don't see the river flowing, they see it coming out of pipes. Maybe it's easier for them to imagine a shortage when it's brown instead of white in Colorado. So we are certainly in a water shortage right now. And then the last thing I wanted to talk about, not so much Eagle County, but in my role on the Water Quality Control Commission. And Rebecca and her team talked about that yesterday, the dredge and fill regulations that were implemented in Colorado looking to protect the wetlands because of the Sackett decision. And Rebecca talked about the focus on what does adjacent to a ditch mean, and what does supported by a ditch mean. And one of the things that I thought was really interesting and important for this board to think about is they talked about exclusions and exemptions, and exclusions are related to a water body regardless of the activity. That's what the adjacent to a ditch and supported by a ditch is. Exemptions are activities regardless of where they take place. So nearly all ag activities are exempted. And there was a lot of concern and a lot of testimony during the meeting about, is this going to be a negative effect for agriculture? And are these definitions correct to be
making sure we're providing the amount of water to the crops that we need to and getting by with the supply that Mother Nature gives us, because we're in the same boat as everyone else in Uray County. It's what comes off the hills, what we have to use. Unfortunately, the focus sometimes is on how much water can we divert? What does that decree allow us to do? And if that becomes the focus, it's very hard to create a sustainable project that really meets the needs of the water users, less so just how much water can we force through a partial flume. That becomes the end goal. very difficult to put um, those two points together and come up with a good project. And in some cases that's been a hurdle for, sustainable water projects. We're also still working on putting a soil moisture sensor in, trying to determine how we can use that data to better inform our water users, the soil conditions, because we've seen just a slew of, not just this year, but other years, we've had no snow in the low country, and that really affects how we enter the water year and how we need to be prepared. We've seen really high flows lately in our tributaries, which is alarming. I think everyone else has been seeing that. Our snowpack that we have been getting is melting off, so thinking about how do we slow that down or hold it back and stretch that out, I think something we need to all be considering. We're thinking about in Uray County. Some of the effects, Uray Ice Park has been closed. That's a huge economic driver for Uray County. We've had events canceled. I think today they're opening the park finally, but haven't had enough cold weather and or water to open the ice park. I skied on Red Mountain this last weekend and there was barely enough snow at Ironton to ski. I don't know how even backcountry was looking really rough. So it is bleak. Good news is they were able to put a ski touring competition together and at the San Juan ski touring event in Uray, which is a huge event. The town was packed, but had to make snow again for the event, which is not uncommon, but kudos to them for putting it together and getting it to work. And of course, we got snow like the day before, which helped. One other thing I wanted to mention is Uncompahgre Watershed Partnership has been stepping up their level of interest to support agricultural water users in the Uray County area, to bring funding that would be multi-purpose. They typically focus on water quality issues in our basin, which is great. We have a number of those issues. But they're interested in doing it. They've been stepping up their level of concern and want to bring on a board member from the Uray County area who is an agricultural producer. I think that would really help their board and also help direct those efforts and funds. So moving forward, we're going to continue with hopefully some good water projects in the coming days, and be talking to Melissa and other staff here and at the CWCB and the roundtable to try to put something together.
In the Gunnison County, I think the predominant thing you're seeing in the newspapers is the amount of development proposals happening throughout the East River Basin, Crested Butte South, and even east and west of Gunnison. So been a lot of conversations, a lot of community meetings, a lot of consternation over the amount of development, how it's happening, impacts on wildlife movement and crossing, wildfire hazards, areas where we know that there may be some risk with debris flows if a fire were to happen. So I'm happy to say that a lot of the work that our district has been doing and the planning that we've been doing, the geofluvial assessments, the wildfire risk, and the zones of concern are helping to inform that decision making. So that's a good thing. I think our augmentation program is being tapped pretty hard. I'm not sure how much additional units we'll have for sale in the Meridian Lake Reservoir if some of these development proposals actually go through. We do have reports of groundwater wells going dry in a number of different areas where you have wells on hill slopes or homes. So we are hearing more of that more frequently. We did complete our harmful algal bloom study, and that report has been published by the USGS in a scientific investigation report. So that really shed a lot of light on the fact that there are not additional nutrients coming into the reservoir from anything happening within the tributaries, but there are natural background levels of phosphorus coming into Iola Basin from the Powderhorn area. So just natural geologic sources. And so it's really good to get a handle on where that's coming from. The study also found that a septic system from one of the RV resorts in the area was actually broken and contributing nutrients to the system. The county has since put a stop work order, got them to fix it, and then pulled that stop work order and got that taken care of as well. I think some concern about Trump's announcement and plan to dismember NCAR. I think they do a lot of really important work, so I wanted to bring just attention to that if you hadn't heard about it or read about it in the paper. I think the other thing I wanted to mention is that CSU extension, one of the things that came out of our drought resiliency planning was just the opportunities to partner who's doing what in the basin and having a better understanding of that. And CSU extension wrote a grant to the Colorado Department of Ag, and it looks like we're going to get an award to purchase a drill seeder, which is really important because we'd like to do more research and studies on different types of seed that we might be able to use, and that would perform better in dry years throughout the basin. And so having that piece of equipment was going to be really important for that. And CSU extension will be leading that. And that's it. No snow. Not much. Same story.
So Saguache County, in the fall, we had a lot of rain. Our creeks were bank to bank again, and 2 weeks, you never knew whether it was gonna be high or way low or whatever. And then we got over a foot of snow around Thanksgiving, which was good. There's no longer cameras on 114, and they don't play between 7 p.m. and 5 a.m. And with the cameras gone, the state doesn't know if it snowed or not. So roads were really bad. That really was bad for 3 days. Just rough. I mean, wasn't horrible, but it was definitely a winter experience. Right now we haven't had snow for quite some time. We've had 2 or 3 snowfalls that were 2 to 3 inches each time. I have a drift in my driveway right at the gates, but it's from snow blowing from the bar ditch over. So obviously that's not bad either. It was just strange to see that drift, but we've had high winds, and of course fire dangers always there. We've got an increased amount of people, probably due to the gas prices being lower and maybe a little bit of cabin fever. They're going on back roads, getting stuck, thinking that you go to Lake City or whatever. And of course, cell service in that area is not great, so they'll hitch a ride or get out so far, and people are looking for people. And of course, there's very few houses in my stretch of the area, so it puts a burden on everybody. And with the cold temperatures, I mean, it could be catastrophic. Also, it's my understanding that the DOW is checking. I don't know whether it's because Gunnison, the influx of more people, not just Gunnison, but people everywhere. They think that our elk population is moving maybe more towards the San Luis Valley, going across the divide. I know I've got about 350 elk that are in my backyard, and that's about what the number is always. So I don't know where these elk are coming from that they're finding more so on that other side, but that's kind of concerning. Anyway, I guess we're gonna have snow in a few days, so we'll see what we get. Thank you.
Thanks, Phoebe. Ms. Macy?
Oh, well, Route County has much of the same story as everybody else as far as the snow and lack of moisture. We are acutely aware of it and concerned about fire season. I think everybody knows last year we had the Crochet fire in Route County, and then our neighbors in Rio Blanco with the Lee fire. And we were fortunate that the federal government did step in and fulfill its obligation to help us with those, but had they not, it would have been about a $10 million hit for Route County on the Crochet fire. So we're really watching what's going to happen with that and trying to be prepared for the fire season. Similar to some of our other mountain towns, we do track what's happening with snowpack tourism by sales tax revenues, but also employments at our Yampa Valley Regional Airport. So we are still seeing people coming in, despite the fact that we really don't have the snow that we're used to. And also like Lincoln County and Gunnison County, our communities are highly aware of development pressure on water resources. You may have heard that we are going to soon be visited by the billionaires with a proposal for a private ski area called Stagecoach Mountain Ranch. It's an active planning application, so I can't really speak to the substance of the proposal, but essentially it is a private ski area within a gated community of 600 homes. It has some affordable housing element adjacent to the Stagecoach Reservoir. And I'm sure you're aware that Stagecoach Reservoir is an impaired waterway already, managed by the Upper Yppa Water Conservancy District. So part of the proposal previously included a golf course, which was pulled because of the fact that it was impossible to prove that it would have negative impacts to the Stagecoach waterway. So that's not under consideration right now. But Upper Yppa has agreed to serve for snowmaking with water out of Stagecoach Reservoir. And then because of the fact that this will also trigger significant upgrades to Morrison Creek's Water and Sanitation District, now this is a 1041 development proposal. So those of you who are interested in land use stuff know that that is a pretty exciting opportunity to add some additional review to development proposal because it has a statewide implication. So we're excited and anxious at the same time about this thing that is coming at us and really have an eye on how we're going to protect the water resources. We're working with QQ as a consultant agency. One of the things we did with our land use code was to add some pretty significant elements of additional review when it comes to water resources. So the developers now have to prove compliance with the 208 plan in order to be able to even submit the proposal. So we're trying to be pretty clear and upfront about the fact that if you want to come and play in Routt County, you're going to need to protect our water resources. So you stay tuned on that one. One of the other things that's happening in Routt, of course, is unincorporated Routt does not have very modern infrastructure when it comes to water. So we're replacing 2 wastewater treatment plants that are basically in our most low income communities, and we're almost complete with those projects. So that's a very good thing. The Excel power plant, I'm going to try to keep this very brief and high level and what is related to your interests, but with the closure of the Excel power plant and the Hayden Station, which is operated by Excel, we see significant impacts to property tax revenue. So the property tax revenue generated from that station is approximately $4 million a year. So when that closure occurs, we will see a significant negative impact to property taxes, and some of those taxes benefit the River District. It's a small-ish proportion, $28,000 for the River District. And when you think about that as compared to 4 million, it's a pretty small impact. But at the same time, we have been in negotiations and discussion with the PUC and Excel to try to replace that property tax revenue. Moffett County, our neighbors, were very successful in working with Tri-State to negotiate with their power plant. So we are following their lead. We actually were awarded only 6 years of replacement property tax revenue initially by the PUC. We requested reconsideration and rehearing, and we were able to get 10 years. So that's a positive thing. So that money that you get from the Hayden Power Plant will be in place for another 10 years, and then we'll see what happens. Hopefully we can do some economic development work and get some things happening. I won't bore you with those details. We have a lot of things in the pipeline. Importantly, though, the water rights, the acquisition of the water rights, we feel is a pretty big win. And when I say we, it's the Routt County governments. We submitted our case as the Routt County governments, which basically means the town of Hayden and Routt County. And based on my previous work, I've seen what that water rights portfolio looks like, and it's pretty robust. So if anybody is interested in thinking about what you're doing in 24 years, we will acquire those water rights in 2050. So if your crystal ball can tell you what will be most relevant as far as what needs to be done with those rights, love to talk to you about it. A lot of our partners at the City of Steamboat Springs and other places are very interested in helping us figure out what this looks like and what this means for us. But we're really pleased with that. So wanted to just conclude with the USGS. We are not part of the JFA that we talked about yesterday, but we are also supporting that program. We think it's hugely important. I know we talked about asking the state if they could contribute financially. And I will say, as much as I work with the state legislature and the state on some of these issues, I just don't think there's money available for practically anything these days. So I'm sure we can ask, but I don't know that we should get our hopes up too much on that one. That's it. Thanks.
If I can just quickly, Director Macy's contacted me and Zane back in December when they were seeking the request for reconsideration in front of the PUC to extend the payback period to Routt County and the taxing entities there. I was initially inclined and we drafted a letter. I then did a little bit of research to make sure that we were in line with district policies as they exist and ended up not sending that letter of support for their request for reconsideration. Not because we disagreed with the intent of it, but the source of the additional tax revenue. I felt like the staff was not able to send that letter without board approval because it isn't Excel, the corporation, or Excel, the shareholders paying that additional 10 years. It's their ratepayers. And therefore our ratepayers who exist elsewhere in the district and are served by Excel would be paying that. And while it still may be an absolutely appropriate thing for the River District to submit that letter, under guidance that I've received from the board, I felt like we were picking one subset of residents within our district over another larger subset. And so we did not send it. Luckily, that didn't harm didn't seem to have any effect on the PUC's decision. So I just want the board to be aware that in her role as commissioner before being appointed director, Sonia had reached out and we'd had that correspondence. So you're all aware.
Rover. Well, Delta County, like everybody else, looking at the mountain, it doesn't look very bright, but I think our soil moisture is actually in good shape right now. Of course, 50 days from now, that can be different. But it's kind of weird into January and things are greening up like it's the I don't know what the future is, but it's concerning. As far as the rest of it, many of the smaller towns are redoing water systems, replacing infrastructure. And I think that's going to continue to be Delta County push as far as the water world is protect what we have and try and push for replacing aging infrastructure. We have a little bit of a disagreement with CWCB on how some of those grants are awarded with the state of the river downstream and over the top of the hill and everything else. I don't know whether it's really, we keep talking, seems like there's a push to look at new projects. Seems to me that you're going to be so far down the line on where those decrees are that don't know how feasible those are. And so we've kind of taken the roundtable, it's kind of taken the same course of, let's protect what we have. A lot of those reservoirs on the Grand Mesa were built before the compact. Those are the ones that we need to shore up and help our bucket as much as we can. So I think that's probably the direction we will continue to take. But as far as the rest of this year, there's still time. Hopefully it starts snowing, but doesn't look real good right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Drought, well, that's the common word, but the old timers that I know, they're talking about, this is gonna make the 1977 drought look like a wet year. I hate to say it, and Taylor Draw Dam will request administration because that's the only means that the lower White River has to bring water to its district. It's the only means they have, so that's how it works. Water shortages were experienced throughout the White River Basin, particularly the lower White River, as I reported during the last meeting. Where the river was completely void, there was no water in it. and water users had no supply for any of their purposes. I also learned within the past couple of weeks that there were other shortages found below the confluence of the White River and Piance Creek and between Piance and Taylor Draw Dam. There was another stretch in there that was void of water as well. And I'm still learning and getting the stories as I'm visiting with more water users. Thanks to the water commissioner and Eastern Rio Blanco County irrigators, several ditches throttled their head gates to send some water down to those lower water users. But that still only created a minimal volume of about 30 CFS for these people to kind of scrap over. But we still, like Sonia mentioned, we had numerous domestic water supplies, which are shallow wells, that were empty. These wells have been there now for 50, 75 years, and they were sucking air. There was nothing in there. So these folks had to learn the hard way on how to do dishes and laundry and go about the regular things that we all take advantage of in life. That's just a normalcy. Impaired water quality is something I'm working with Rangeley. I'm just kind of learning with them. Thank you very much to the River District for helping them as well. You'll see that there's a grant application for the town of Rangeley on doing some things. Rangeley's only source of water is the White River. There is no groundwater to meet their need. There is no alternate stream that they can take water from. So it's the White River below Taylor Draw Dam. That's it. So whatever that river yields, that town has to make it potable. That's extremely complex water treatment plant. And they just went through probably about a $10, $15 million renovation on that plant, and it's probably not going to be enough. So I'm sympathetic to them for where they're looking to face coming up here when the runoff starts again. So it's not only impaired water quality from the fires, which included all water users, but we got reports of substantial sedimentation. And here again, I'm getting more where these extend well below it through Taylor Draw and above Taylor Draw, where we got recreational users that were out there last fall duck hunting, and they had to be pulled out of the river. They were in waders and they got stuck in muck, fire sediment muck. Okay, that's very real. And I got one report of a coon that stole a duck, and the rancher was going to get his duck, and he had to get pulled out because he got stuck in the mud trying to retrieve his duck.
We heard about the quicksand in Rio Blanco County.
Yeah, that's a very real story, and it happens to be a colleague of mine that I work with. So, and we got diversions, obstructed, and pumps that are completely buried. So they're going to have to get in the river and do something to get these things out. So fire models, I've been talking with several U.S. Forest Service managers and BLM managers, and we're talking about the White River Basin in Rio Blanco County, particularly with this. But they're saying over the next 30 years, you better harden your system and your resources because Rio Blanco County is going to burn. And the White River Basin is going to burn. You're just starting. And in the past 10 years, we've burned over about 220,000 acres already, if not more. And they said there's more going to come and they're going to be devastating, but where? You don't know. But you have some areas you can harden. So, and the models, I've looked at them, and the one that burned this year, the Lee fire at Piance, that was predicted. That was predicted. So evolving state and regulatory changes and guidance are impacting the water user's ability to create a firm supply. I've been working on a reservoir project now for quite some time to help us harden our resources, but with the constant changes with our leadership, whether it's state or federal, we're being told, thank you for your patience while we learn the new rules and get the new guidance in place. Meanwhile, water users are going without. Sit there and try and tell that to your constituent. That's not a good place to be or a conversation to have where you're saying, I'm sorry, go talk to this guy over here because somebody decided they got to change their path forward. So, sense of frustration throughout the White River Basin. Things we have to live without, others take for granted as a minimal standard of living. And until you see it, I can't believe we're living in an era where people can't get water. Forgive me here, but I've seen far too much of it in an area that has a huge thumb on it. And they're trying to keep trying, but they just keep meeting the departments of no and told they can't do anything. Or go grab another rock because your information is not clear enough. It's not enough detail. All they do is just tell you, no, go bring another rock. Well, the picture of the White River empty is full of rocks. You want another rock? Go pick one up and don't get the bottom of your feet wet. The 7 basin states, yesterday I gave you a value. It is 11,800 acre feet. That's 30% of our consumptive water in the White River Basin. But right now, the Rio Blanco Water District is the most junior water conservancy district in the state, to where 45% of our water will be curtailed. But throughout the White River Basin, it's about 30% of all White River water users would be curtailed, which is substantial. Meanwhile, the DWR continues to progress or start the process for developing compact rules. But where are those going to fall? When will they be completed? And meanwhile, augmentation water for compact administration is still a no swear word. Can't do nothing about it. The good news, CPW reached out, and there's an aquatic nuisance species program rolling out for the White River. We don't have one. They did an investigation at Taylor Draw and was found to be the second most likely reservoir, high hazard reservoir, to receive an infestation from outside sources, because there is no ANS inspection in anywhere of the White River Basin. So CPW is going to start a program cooperatively with the Rio Blanco Water Conservancy District for all of the White River Basin water users to get at least something, a minimal plan in place. River District staff, including engaging the public comment process, it was noticed by lots of people that you were there, and it was greatly appreciated. And I definitely see the successes of this, but seeing the willingness of the River District staff to jump in feet first and sometimes head first, just because you got to be involved, that's not always found, but it's refreshing to see. And I witnessed lots of River District staff go in and do that. We need more of that, and other people can learn from that mentality as well. Finally, the recovery program. We've been working on trying to get a White River management plan in place for a couple of decades, start, stop. Finally, 2 years ago, it got stopped. They adopted the White River management plan. They approved it, but they decided not to move the plan forward because there's not any means to meet all the goals of the plan, which is really water supply. They can't adopt a plan without having an augmentation source for this. But with the help of the recovery program, and I'm going to say David Graff does an outstanding job. He helped last year to start a conversation with the recovery program, start doing an annual hydrology look for the White River to see what releases need to be done or what the fish need. Taylor Draw Dam can release water for the endangered fish, but that's it. And there's an actual agreement in place with the state of Colorado and the federal government to release water and to go through, just like they do with their other basins, like the 15-mile reach, to take a look at the hydrology. But last year we had about 45 people from all these agencies involved. It's going to happen again, and they've actually added it into one of their plans and processes within the recovery program. So that might bring a little bit of relief if we can just use a little bit of that storage rather than being held back regulatorily. They're working with us to recognize that your program is not going to go so far if you don't put some water in the river. Because last year, I'm not imagining too many of those fish survived. So thank you for taking the time and allowing me to engage.
Thank you. McGinnis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, Andy on Shoshone, it was great, but I'll tell you, the week following, I probably had 10 or 15 people say, "Oh, you got it done. It's Shoshone. We got it all done."
Yeah.
I said, "Oh, no. We're not."
Don't we wish?
So it does point out to our public relations people that it's going to be a struggle keeping momentum. We had a lot of momentum, but they're kind of anticlimactic and like, oh, geez. Anyway, same thing with the weather and stuff like that. The problem we've got in Mesa County really is it's very easy to trick the fruit trees. And if they start to blossom And then you get a freeze, which every year, that's what those big propellers you see on happens every year, but usually we get this kind of weather a month or two down the road, not now. So that's a big problem. Interestingly, it's also a big problem for hibernation. Animals are coming out and insects are coming out. So that's gonna be a problem. And then mussels, I understand most effective thing killing mussels is when it freezes. But we're not getting that kind of weather down there. So the mussel problem, which we've worked on so hard, is probably gonna reemerge. So that's our biggest challenge we've got there. I will mention that in regards to conservation easements. So I spent a lot of time on conservation easements over the last several years, actually. And in Mesa County, about 76% of our land is owned by the government. That will never be developed. And it's great, it's public land, it's wonderful. But of the remaining land, 24% of that land, about 21 to 24%, we get very little cooperation. So we don't have the exact number, but probably closer to 24% of the private land in Mesa County is controlled in perpetuity without learning provisions by conservation easements, primarily which all are almost owned, almost all of them have third-party federal government rights. And almost all these easements are owned by people primarily out of the Front Range, or they're not local residents. That's a sleeper. The average in our state for conservation easements, these are held in perpetuity. And the average county in the state's probably around 2%. So we're at 23 or 24%. Well, now that same outfit, or the leader of that outfit, is now looking at water. That's their next goal, is to grab water and freeze it, essentially freeze it in place. Problem with that is what happens, and I'll talk about affordability, and I was born and raised here in Glenwood, and I saw it happen all the way down to Aspen, now it's headed to Rifle. You create a shortage, the price goes up. So the people aren't worried about the water or conservation easements, are the very, very wealthy people. And we begin to lose an important part of our communities because we're creating a shortage, we're restricting the land. And right now in Grand Junction, the house prices are way out of line. And so I think we need to pay some attention in the river district here. What's happening with these conservation easements that will lock up water in perpetuity. And if you look at some of these conservation easements, most of the people that had it, that sold their land or took on the conservation easement, first of all, very few of them allow public access. Division of Wildlife is an exception. And we do get cooperation from Division of Wildlife. We get zero cooperation from cattlemen's, from Sierra Club, conservation, any of those people working with us. But the Division of Wildlife does, they allow access. They're very professional in the way they do it. But that's the exception, not the rule. So I think we need to start paying attention now. What will be the impact from the example we've seen on land conservation easements if they start checkermating or checkering around? This is my word, checkerboarding around. And the original easements in Mesa County, which were probably some of the original ones in the state, those were the ranches. That's not the case anymore. Don't let them tell you that. Checkerboarding, whether it's to prevent a power line going through or things like that. And those things are next to impossible to change. So we really need to take a look if they have anywhere close to the success that they've had on land, what they could do to water and water planning in the future. And these people that I've dealt with in land conservation easements, they're single focus. They could care less what the impact is in the future, other than they think they're saving the world. So there's impacts. I just wanted to mention that because Route County talked about that, and as counties and so on, we have a lot of the, for example, water rights owned by the government. We have a lot of that in Mesa County because what happens is that the cities annex, they switch the water rights in the ditch company for city water. And the city, our communities are very responsible with it and it works good. So, you know, there's ways to make this work. And then finally, I think That wraps it up. So, one other thing, we feel the impact mostly in Mesa County with the lack of snow, not lack of skiers. We have one ski area down there. But Poma, the ski lift maker, and by the way, that's a big manufacturer. They make a lot of the ski lifts in the world. In fact, in Las Vegas, which we were recently, a big Ferris wheel was made in Grand Junction. Poma made that. So that's what we feel the impacts. And the other way you feel the impacts over Thanksgiving or over the holidays. If I go up the highway, which I get during the holidays, up to the Rifle Airport. So they bring a lot of aircraft into Rifle for people going to Aspen, these private jets. And that airport's usually packed with private jets. They probably had 4 or 5. And they buy lots of fuel, spend lots of money. So economically, that's kind of what we feel on the manufacturing and services that we provide to some of the resort communities and so on. So it's a slowdown. That'll do it for me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Being at the end of the line, they don't have a lot to add. You know, we're concerned about fire, concerned about water shortages. But I do want to reiterate what Director Martinez said. I was at the CWCB meeting, and it was very impressive what the staff did. I mean, really pulled off an impressive feat. Everybody should be really proud of what you did. It was phenomenal. So,
Thank you.
you bet.
That was pretty short. I wasn't ready. No.
Everything's been said.
Yeah, it pretty much has. So I guess Moffett County, I'll offer a little different perspective. Since 2019, when we knew that our biggest employer and biggest tax base payer, the power plant and the mines that feed them coal, was going to be closed by 2028. We've been dealing with the uncertainty of that since then. And I think it's taught us a lesson. It certainly has to me that most wrecks either don't happen or they're not as bad as you thought they were going to be. And the way you deal with it is you adapt and anticipate what may be coming and you adapt. And so things are happening. We negotiated with Tri-State to keep their water rights at that location, their power generation water rights, which are pretty valuable, to keep them at that location and not have some legislation that allowed them to not be abandoned until 2050. But if they're reinstituted, they have to be used for power generation in the Yampa Valley. We're seeing that Tri-State's going to actually build a 350 megawatt natural gas plant at the site. So some of that water will continue to be used, and there won't be coal mine jobs, but there'll be some jobs and some economic base there. Going to put in a 300 megawatt battery storage unit there that doesn't use any water, but it's going to create jobs. There's a 6,000 acre solar farm out the Craig that's an eyesore and in wildlife migration routes that it's someone who sees that it's funny how we can't allow a gas well, but we can allow 6,000 acres of solar panels right in the middle of Axel Basin. But it's there. It produces a whopping 135 megawatts when it's sunny. So that's there. But so I just want to say that yeah, we've been dealing with this uncertainty since 2019, tax base and in our local budgets. But as Sonia mentioned, we've got some room there for that. We negotiated something fairly good to keep that tax base up for a while. As several have mentioned, we know there's more risk of wildfires all the time. But there again, you become as nimble and adaptive as you can to what might happen. So on some specific things that I think we've done pretty well at in Moffett County, and part of it, you guys in the River District's been a part of, is our Elkhorn Reservoir. We've been through cooperation with the Water Trust and the Yampa River Fund and the River District. We use that water to keep a call off the river because now we're over appropriated, and kind of keep the irrigators able to raise some hay, and it goes clear up to the headwaters. When the call comes on at the lower end of your river, it goes in priority all the way up. So it doesn't just benefit Moffett County, benefits everybody in the basin. So that's been a good thing. I already mentioned Tri-State, and we are over appropriated, Francis, and Moffett County still continuing to get a blanket aug plan in place so that wells can be drilled if you have aug water. And there's an aug plan area, so some of our counties not in that area, but to allow, as Scotty, you said, some things to still happen, but we still drill well, but they have to have augmentation water. Or if it's more than 35 acres, they can have a household use. And the last thing is, we've got the measurement rules in place and we're dealing with those. For those of you who are getting ready to go through that, it's not, I won't say it's a burden, but it's something you have to deal with, but it's not impossible. And it is what it is. So I guess maybe we're just in crisis fatigue, but we're not maybe as worried as we were 6 or 7 years ago when we first said, my goodness, what's going to happen to our economy or our community when this one big employer and tax base leaves. Well, and now we don't know when they're going to leave because there's been some stays put on the closures too. So anyway, yeah, it's dry, but we'll get by. I think that's what I see in our community, by and large.
Nice ray of sunshine.
Right. So I'll start with thanking the staff for the tremendous work that was done down there to see the separate area. Throughout the day, you could just feel that momentum building. I know pins and needles for a while, but as we got later into the afternoon, the questions started coming. You could see that board, they had a direction, and it was very positive towards that in-stream flow. And I really, truly like to thank you guys for the tremendous work for you and the staff with tremendous. I'm going to take a little different approach to this dry weather. There's not a darn thing we can do about it. There really isn't anything we can do about it. In our community, it's interesting. We have more people out enjoying this warm weather right now, walking. People get out to walk because of the bitter cold and the snow on the ground. This year, it's amazing what's happening there. We've seen an extended season with the side-by-side rentals and stuff, using the BLM in the areas that they can. On the other side of that, our snowmobile sales in Grand County is way down. Going to rabbit ears, that snow's beat to the ground. I mean, there's just, they used as much as they could and stopped. So we're not seeing quite as many people that way. Let's see what else here. Oh, the ice fishing contest that always occurs on Wolford had been canceled for the year because there was some ice. Sad deal, but, and that brings in quite a bit of people for that. The chamber decided they couldn't do it. It was with no ice. I'm kind of a little bit worried about the docks that we are purchasing, whether or not they'll get used this coming year. If we don't get the snowpack, but we'll worry about that when that time comes. Mary Jane ski area is tied in with Winter Park, celebrated its 50th anniversary this year. A lot of people showed up for that. A lot of the old timers that skied and stuff showed up to see what the celebration was going to be like, and turned out really good. A lot of people there. Problem was there wasn't many ski runs available for them to use, and as one of the ski patrollers said, it's just a ribbon of death because everyone's on the same path going to the same spot, and it's not safe. So, but so one thing the county did was right below Windy Gap. There was a piece of private property there that had roughly a quarter of a mile of the Colorado River.
The county went ahead and purchased that. So they opened that up below Windy Gap, which allows for more public use of the Colorado River right through that area. And that will enhance that bypass stream, and it will make for a better situation there. Kind of an unusual situation there that allowed the county to buy that. Sounds like there was some disagreements with the owners there, and there was a fire that was started there. Burnt down some of the cabins and stuff like that, created a situation that wasn't positive, but the county went and made the best of it by purchasing that property and opening up that water. I think it comes open this coming year, so that'll be a positive. You know, love to be able to worry about the weather. We'll make our plans accordingly. Most of the builders and developers up there are having a lot of fun because they can continue to work. And so there are positives through this change of weather. I think the coldest weather we've had so far this year's been about 5 below. We've normally had 40 below. So truly, we are enjoying it. That's all.
Thank you, Mike. Well, in Montrose County, we're in the same shape as everybody. Up above us is not getting as much snow as what we would like to see. I know that there's a number of farmers, including our farm, where we may not plant some acreage, particularly the less productive ground, the rocky ground, some of those kind of things, to try and focus on the ground that may make enough crop to sell. It's a lot like what said up in the Grand County. Not much we can do about it. Ag is always pretty nimble, or, you know, they deal with what they've got in front of them. The rest of the community seems pretty well insulated from any of these kind of shortages because they're in the business world. They're doing those kind of things. Montrose seems to have a lot of traffic in it. We've been found, so to speak. I think we're going to be Denver West here pretty quick, but you know, I mean, that's good for the community as far as the growth, is raising the taxes and doing the things that communities need to do. Personally, I don't like sitting through 2 or 3 stoplights, but then again, you know, they were driving on the same streets we did when I was in high school, so I don't know why we bellyache about it. We're not going to fix them. Let's just live with it. I think there's some concern in the ag community about where we'll start in regards to percentages and those kind of things in the delivery. You know, I'm very proud of those people that can coax a living up out of the ground, because it takes pretty special people. You know, they know which end of the shovel does the work. And they'll be out there. The shorter the water is, the more the work is. And everybody in this room realizes that when it comes to agriculture. So, you know, they're signing up for a busy summer. I wanted to mention, when we went over there to that meeting, the preparation was recognizable. You could see our folks had done so much homework. They were ready for whatever question that came at them whenever it came at them. Probably the most impressive thing, and it goes back to that nimble, is that when CWCB would ask a question and our support community was immediately asked by our staff, we went down the hallway, stood around in a caucus, I guess you might call it, for lack of, I don't know what else, a conference room. And a decision was made within a few minutes, and everybody was on the same page. We didn't have arguments. Everybody went back into the room. It was ready to go. And when you live in a place like I do and things move at no speed, that was impressive. And the staff acquitted themselves to the point that I kind of felt like the coach at Indiana. That, you know, people have been discounting us. By God, they're paying attention today. So thank you guys. Appreciate it all. Thanks.
I
really appreciate all of that from board members. I want to stress that was an entire team lift and, want to, just say that our team did an amazing job. And there's no way that, Peter and I, who happen to just be the mouthpieces, could have been up there without, all the work that everybody else did and was doing in live time at that meeting. I do want to call out Amy in particular for helping organize and get all of our supporters in that room lined up and ready to go. And she did a phenomenal job keeping me and Peter on track. So thank you, everybody. I think it's break.
Yeah, let's take a break. Come back at 20 to 11. Ladies, if you're ready, we're ready.
Okay, today we have 2 action items for the board, but before we dive into the action items, Amy and I have something pretty exciting to celebrate. CFP has hit an important milestone. We have completed 5 years of operation. I told Director Dennison last night that he needed to act pretty excited. We need a standing ovation, et cetera. He's working on it. But in all seriousness, this is 5 years of impact, 5 years of grants being put on the ground in an intentional and impactful manner. And we just want to take a moment to thank you all for making this happen. And so we have 2 tools that staff created to commemorate and showcase these 5 years. Wanted to kind of give you a sneak peek. So we are on our website right now under Community Funding Partnership Annual Report. As you'll remember, we usually print an annual report. This year we went digital, and you'll have, this is a postcard at your desk. We're going to mail these to all elected officials. Essentially, it's a quick summary of the annual report with a QR code to direct folks to this website. But I wanted to kind of walk through this annual report quickly because there's some key statistics that we wanted to share. Over 5 years, we've provided $32 million in grants to 147 grants, over $98 million in leveraged funds. That's local, state, federal funding coming on the ground across our 15 counties. Over 5 years, we've also started to take some time to figure out, hey, how do you explain what $32 million in grants looks like? This is just a small snapshot, but that's 77 agricultural infrastructure projects, 30 research projects. That's 3.6 miles of river restored, 16 drinking water and water quality projects. The list goes on. But we wanted to highlight, what does this look like? As you've seen these graphs multiple times in your board packets, always tracking our categories, our distribution by basin, by county. And of course, we did a call out to the accelerator grants. I think it's important to note that for every dollar we invested in this program, we received a return of $64 in federal return. It continues to be an important part of our program. And Andy made it on the annual report. We also have a timeline showing the progression of our impact. I'm just going through this quickly because I know you guys will walk through this later. Shoshone is an important call out. This was our largest grant of $20 million. And 2025 deserved a little bit of a shout out too. Last year, we closed out with 18 grants with 6 million provided. Of note, 4 million of that went to the Shoshone Water Rights Preservation Project, and 4 million was leveraged. Called out a few grants, etc. So you get the gist. This is our way of celebrating where we've been and kind of guiding us into the future. I do want to thank Matt Abusi here. He's much of the vision and the creativity behind this, creating it to be public. Okay, I have another tool that also deserves, oh my gosh, standing ovation. There we go. So I know you think I have many skills, but I'll tell you GIS, I do not. So Sam Callahan here was really the mastermind behind this. This is an upgrade to what we used to have on our website. We had a map of all our projects. Now this is a dashboard where you as a constituent can come online, filter by year, by basin, county, grant type, to really get a picture of what type of grants happen in your geographic area and by year. Again, you can find this on our website under the committee partnership tab, but wanted to give you guys a quick snapshot of this. So, thumbs up, yes.
Awesome.
I'll follow up with an email with a link to these items. You guys. Okay. Anything else on that?
No, I just want to echo Melissa's thank you to the board for all of the support and the direction on the community funding partnership. It's been really fulfilling for Melissa and I to look back at the 5 years and all that we've accomplished together, and changes to the program that we've developed, including the accelerator grants and our ability to fund legacy level projects. It's a really fun and impactful program to get to work on across the district, and certainly want to thank all of our constituents and our voters who made this possible for us. And it's fulfilling to reflect back on what we've done with those awards.
Okay, so now we can dive into board actions. Your first action today, we're going to talk about the CFP framework. As a reminder, we usually have a cadence of every January we come to you with updates to our community funding partnership framework, which is our guiding document for the program. And we reflect these changes also in the guidelines that are accessible for our applicants. Now, Amy and I have taken some time to run through the framework and have a few edits that we want to make sure you guys are okay with and get board approval on. The PDF document is in your board packet, but essentially there are a few items that we want to talk through. So the first item that we can run over really quickly is we have some administrative changes, just a bit of cleanup. So if you have any questions on that in the board packet. The one we want to talk to today is we have some clarification that we've put into the watershed health and water quality multi-benefit paragraph, which I have up here on the screen. And this is reflective of conversations that we've had with you all, where you provided some really helpful insight on how we could make our program more clear and fit the needs of our communities. So a few things you'll see in this paragraph is we've added this necessity that projects that address drinking water quality need to have public drinking water systems. They also need to address current exceedances by CDPHE for their primary, especially primary contaminant levels. And then we added a focus too on temperature in addition to pollution when it comes to the health of our rivers. And we know that we have funded different projects that address innovative measurement of our snowpack, soil moisture, to understand and better prepare for forecasting. And this includes ASO, I mentioned soil moisture, the list goes on. And so we've had a few conversations with board members, including Sonia Chavez, that brought this up as an important addition to this paragraph. So this is the most substantive change. We also added a paragraph on the accelerator grant program because it continues to get continues to get some attention from our grantees, wanting more and more opportunity for us to pay for the grant writing, the engineering design so that they can apply for a federal grant. This continues to be a well-sought program, so we added that to the framework. So we are seeking board approval on the updates to this framework. And I have another discussion before we dive into this update or this request for approval, but I was curious if you guys have any questions or concerns regarding the watershed health, water quality paragraph or accelerator grants. Okay. At the end of the initial memo, we also provided a quick discussion on the potential to add wastewater as a prospective project within CFP. You know, Amy and I have had a fair amount of conversations with CDPHE and other constituents over the past 5 years, asking, hey, you know, is CFP interested in funding wastewater projects? And to date, under our framework, we really didn't see a fit. And so we took some time after some conversations. Again, Director Chavez, we had a good conversation earlier regarding this, figuring out, hey, does wastewater fit within our framework? And you'll see in this paragraph, we've went through a fair amount of discussion with our tech team, et cetera, to really figure out, hey, is this a fit? And we decided, again, it's probably not a great fit because of the cost of these projects. We have $4 million to give out a year. This would be a big hit if we opened it up to that. We also don't have staff expertise to thoroughly review all of these applications to the benefit that they deserve. So wanted to just open it up to the board if you had any further comments or insight on this, but wanted to give you an update on discussions we've had internally on how to adapt the framework. And Amy, if you have anything.
Yeah, I might just add on the wastewater front is really taking a look at our framework and the intent of the program and where we have the most impact as an organization, and looking at the other funding streams available as you look at both drinking water and wastewater side, which I think we understand are significant needs across our district. We spent some time, like Melissa said, talking with our technical team and our leadership to consider, you know, what does that look like for a program? How would it impact the funding that we have available to give out? How does it impact just our expertise as a staff in navigating those projects and being able to ask the right questions and know that we're leaning on the expertise to bring to the board a recommendation that's based on sound data and expertise, and that's an area that starts to expand from the current capacity and resources that we have at the district. Certainly, I think it means that we continue to communicate with our communities and look for where are those other funding streams that help support what we know is certainly a need across our district. And we recognize that in the water quantity and water quality world, there continues to be a continual blending of these projects. And so want to continue to be creative and look for those opportunities, but also want to be cautious that if we start going into the wastewater realm, we know that there is a lot of need, and it does impact just our ability to use CFP in a way that we have over the last 5 years. So we wanted to just open that up, certainly seek direction from the board on our current position on that. And also just have an opportunity as we look through the watershed health and water quality category description to make sure that we talk to the board about that issue. So I'll pause there, certainly open any questions, or Andy, if you have any thoughts there too.
Well, I think, I guess I would want to give an opportunity for Director Chavez to comment and provide her perspective on it. I think you've done a good job articulating staff's perspective, but I think it's important to hear.
Thanks, Andy. Yeah, happy to comment. And I really appreciate all the work that you've done and the conversations you've had with me. I think there's been a lot of questions that I've asked from constituents to me asking if the River District would consider an application to help support some improvements for wastewater treatment. One of those came from Hinsdale County, right? Rural community, small population, really struggling to keep up with their infrastructure needs. And so I felt like it really wasn't clear within the framework whether we did or did not have a policy on whether we would fund wastewater treatment. I appreciate everything that staff has said about the fact that many communities throughout our district are struggling with the same issues, but compliance with those standards, the ability to treat and maintain water quality within our stream systems is also very important. Questions about whether the river district would want to cap the amount of funding or the number of wastewater treatment projects that we might support if it was the will of the board. But also, I think one of the other questions I had was just about when we have projects that are maybe innovative or trying new technology to treat wastewater treatment. So this Blackwater film that you could use or that's been used in Michigan and lagoon systems as a treatment method, whether we keep the door open on maybe innovation or pilot projects that might benefit or help rural communities address their wastewater treatment challenges. So I'm interested in what the board thinks about that or where we stand. Just wanted to have a conversation.
Scott?
Well, they say out there the pioneers get killed. And so when I look at innovation, especially in a field as broad as this field, I don't think we have near the expertise or the substance financially for us to all of a sudden be a funder for innovation. I mean, we ought to be able to look, and there are many paths that have already been traveled through that forest. And I don't think we need to be one of them because we just financially, substantially, that's number one. Number two, wow, this opens a big door because every community I can think of has a wastewater challenge, including the Grand Valley, because of some federal regulations and drainage off federal land, by the way. And I don't know whether we're limiting it to under-resourced. No, I'm not sure what under-resourced means. You can find lots in Pickens County that may be under-resourced, but still very wealthy. Things. So I think we're doing good. We're still a baby in the woods, even though we've got 5 years. We've done great work. We've got great results. I think we ought to stick with what we know. At this point, with $4 million a year, which seems like a lot, but it goes pretty quick. Which is why I always want to come back up with burden sharing. Because there's always impatient people to kind of squeeze in and shift the burden to those who will accept it.
And right, and these are our constituents, and it's really hard when you have to say no to something that, so
Sure.
sometimes we have wealthy communities like Crested View, but really small populations
That's
paying
right.
for very expensive infrastructure. So it's a challenge across the board and not, as you say, not in just under-resourced communities. So, but it is hard when you're talking about our constituents who voted in favor of these, that it's just a hard no.
They didn't vote for that. They
So
voted for.
ballot issue 7A.
Well, no, I'm talking about that too. They didn't vote for open the door and we're gonna fund any water project or water treatment facility or anything. I mean,
No,
we're just like the bank. We've got to put guardrails on this as well,
That's
especially
exactly,
since we
yeah.
only have $4 million. So
That's the conversation, the sideboards, what does the board think?
Alden?
Director Macy's also.
I saw that.
I've done wastewater for probably 25+ years of my career. From very simple lagoons to very difficult mechanical systems that would. Wastewater is an ugly monster. And there's no end to how much money it costs to run those. And a lot of the wastewater, you're gonna see additional unfunded mandates intending to do good. And I'll speak of Rangeley, just back 10 years ago when I was working for the town, there was a mandate coming to Rangeley that was gonna cost that town, and Rangeley's just a bed and breakfast, that's all it is. It was gonna cost the average water user about $200 a month to maintain their wastewater treatment facility. Is that feasible for something that's really gonna have no impact or negligible amount in the water? That's where I think there's some real caution that needs to go with that and us getting to the wastewater game, because one, you don't have anybody that's a certified operator in here. I think I'm probably the only one in the room. And it's hard. You want to be a good water operator, learn to treat wastewater. But now on the water treatment side, I'm a little bit different. I think the source water is something that you can actually work in, but not necessarily the treatment side. That's what I see. I don't see the district really getting into that because that's more of a regulatory compliance deal that you got to get into. Yeah, but there again, you're going to have new rules that are going to be unfunded mandates these little towns are going to come up with. And what is a undersourced community? I think that needs to be defined, but I think getting into the CDHP, actually water quality rules and trying to come up with treatment techniques and fund that, I think it's something we got to tiptoe into and learn a whole lot more rather than just kind of say, yeah, we'll do that. Because I agree with what was up there before about landscapes, climate change and forest and stuff like that. That I think is pretty plausible, but the other side is too open-ended. I don't know if I expressed myself well with it, but I just don't think we're ready for that yet.
Ms. Macy?
I would definitely defer to the longer standing board members on the question of wastewater. And I hear everything you're saying, having just upgraded 2 plants, in Broward County using ARPA dollars. Yeah, the costs can get crazy and additional regulations come on. And so, I mean, I don't have a strong preference in favor of, and definitely would defer to the expertise of the group if it's preferred to not fund those types of projects. My only question would be, in reading the language about the accelerator program, is it clear in that place, if we were writing a grant, say for a federal or state grant for a wastewater treatment plant, would that be eligible for the accelerator program?
As of today, no.
And is that clear in the document that, or is that a question of like guidance to?
We don't
potential
have,
applicants?
sorry, we don't have anywhere written in a document that wastewater will not be funded.
Okay.
And I think one of our discussions that the board has directed us is to continue to make sure that COP doesn't have too many black lines to be an adaptable funder, knowing that we can't predict the future or ways that, as Amy said, maybe there is a way that there is a multi-benefit project that has wastewater that we could play a part of but we don't have it explicitly written, as Sonia has referred to.
Okay, and I appreciate the temperature addition. I think everybody knows the situation on the Amber River and exceedances, and I know it happens statewide, so I think that language is fantastic.
And Director Macy's, I can add to Melissa's note that we don't specifically call out wastewater. Our framework and guidelines are more specific to water quality and drinking water quality. And so while there isn't a clear no, that's the framing of this. So I'll said that.
Andy?
Yeah, I do want to just provide some historical perspective for board members. When we put together 7A and back in 2019, 2020 and put it on the ballot and representative voters what we're going to do with we had a framework that the board had endorsed. I can tell you there were no discussions or representations by this district that we would fund wastewater treatment. And I have to say, I totally agree with Director Chavez. There is a huge need for funding in this arena. And there's a huge need because the federal government and the state government have imposed unfunded mandates on all of our small towns and keep ratcheting up. And I say small towns, I include Grand Junction in that, just so you know. And I mean, they have ratcheted up the standards or ratcheted them down, however you want to look at it, and not provided any assistance. And we have towns throughout our district right now that are struggling with how to fund these wastewater treatment. I'm not at all disagreeing about the need. It's particularly with the innovative ones, I think it's a great idea to innovate, and I understand the desire. We don't have anybody on staff who's qualified to understand the likelihood of success with an innovative project in the wastewater treatment business. And so I'm concerned about that. The changes, just to speak a little bit to Director Vandenbrink's comments regarding the drinking water systems. As you'll recall, we have funded a few drinking water needs for the town of Somerset. We did some tank lining up in Buffalo Valley Metro District in Summit County. We helped the town of Minturn. We helped recently the mobile home park just outside of Glenwood Springs. So we were trying to find ways, because I think actually it was Director Vandenbrink who brought up, hey, you know, focus on what really is a huge issue, which is when someone's violating those primary contaminant levels. And so we were trying to bring some of that discussion into our guidelines so that we're focused on the right things. There are a lot of drinking water systems that have taste and odor problems and things like that don't rise to those primary contaminant levels. So we're trying to help focus where our money will actually make an impact to communities that need help within our district. I do think that drinking water, different than wastewater, drinking water was addressed in our ballot question. It specifically appeared in the ballot question. It specifically has risen to the top of every one of our polls and among our voters and our constituents, that drinking water quality is absolutely critical. I recognize that if you have, pardon the pun, crappy wastewater going in and someone's taking their drinking water out below, that creates a problem and is all connected, right? I totally get it. But we did focus on drinking water, farm productive agriculture. We really focused on a few really key items, which I think our voters understood. And so I'm not saying we can't. The board is welcome to expand it, but I just wanted to at least provide my perspective as kind of the person who marshaled the discussion and then actually wrote the original framework and adjusted it to what the board was looking for at the time we went to the ballot. So
thanks for the reminder.
So just to be clear, Andy, if we do have projects that look, if we're approached and they might have multi-benefit, push them your way. It's not a hard no, it's just, is there a multi-benefit there that the district would be interested in?
Yeah, and I think too, so many of our conversations are brainstorming other funders. And connecting them with.
Yeah.
So.
And I will say, I'm the one who's also constantly pushing to not create black lines. For anybody who's applied to a state or a federal grant program, and there are all these hard categories, and by the time they've evolved, you look at them and they don't make any sense, and you can't fit within their boxes, and you can't make it work for your unique situation. We're trying to be nimble and retain that. So that's part of why it gets a little fuzzy, but that fuzz is intentional.
I like that about our program. Yeah.
Okay, the additions to the framework do require board action. That is a board approved document, and like Melissa said, we made corresponding edits to our guidelines. So if there's any further questions, we will need an action item to move forward with the proposed guidelines.
I'd make a motion to approve the proposed red lines and changes to the guidelines.
Second, Chavez.
Chavez, second.
Yep.
We've got a motion on the floor. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. And we're change.
Okay. Just have pulling in the team here. So. Let's dive in. Okay.
So I will recuse myself, Mr. Chair, from this portion of the conversation because it is a grant application for the Upper Denison District, so.
Do I need to recuse myself also?
Hey. This is.
Okay, all right.
Hey, Sonia.
Oh, yeah.
I wouldn't mind if you stayed at least in the preliminary discussions. I have a question that it's gonna come up. So you probably can-
Yeah, and we do have folks online who are from the USGS and from General Counsel McLeod, who's also very involved in this project, so, okay.
Right. Okay. Let's dive in. So we have one grant request today from the Upper Gunnison River Water Conservancy District. They are requesting $260,000 for a pretty extensive return flow study completed up on the East River within the Upper Gunnison. So essentially, the goal is to create a model that will characterize surface water and groundwater within this 8-mile stretch to ultimately use and have an idea of the impacts of return flows on this 8-mile stretch. This is a pretty unique project and has required an extensive partnership with USGS, who is diving in deep to implement a large amount of data. Caleb, we were just talking about this project and he's like, this is a lot of data they're working with. So they're collecting groundwater sampling, surface water, agricultural diversions, geochemical data, and they're also doing an end member mixing analysis. For those of you who have never heard of this, like I have not before, this application, essentially this is using natural tracers within the water to calculate what percentage of the water is from surface flow, from groundwater, from return, agricultural return flow, et cetera, to characterize it and understand the makeup of the water. So with all this data collection, they will create a model that will simulate recharge, discharge, surface water, groundwater interactions. Now, as many of you might know, and as we've discussed before, the Upper Gunnison is pretty unique in its connection and reliance on groundwater, especially at a mountainous high elevation area. And so the goal here with this project is to understand what is that relationship with surface water, groundwater, and return flows, so that when we have this future of climate change, water administration, land use change, water users, water managers are going to have a better idea of what's coming down the line, how the river is going to be impacted in the future, especially when we start to look at conserved consumptive use programs. What's the impact when irrigators change to fallow, deficit, split season, et cetera, on the river? And it's not only on the river at that time, but it's on the river 5 years from now, or the groundwater. You know, Amy and I have talked a lot about the importance of our water users having informed data that they can start to really analyze and understand, so that they can start to make decisions that are going to benefit them down in the future. Looking at the lens of CFP, we have funded a similar return flow study up on the White River. It's a bit smaller than this program. It came with a fair amount of assumptions and donated time, but essentially the White River up in Meeker, again, wanted to conduct a study to understand what are the impacts when our producers change to different irrigation practices, or we develop area, or climate change, et cetera, to our river, when we start to really have this strong look at what are the impacts of return flows. So under CFP, our hope is that, you know, we can have a fair amount of examples of these studies, so that other communities across our district can turn to these and analyze, hey, what aspects of these studies do we like, and if they're interested in conducting their own. So kind of giving them options to look at. So this is a quick overview, and I know that Caleb has dived deep into the data and the application, and so here for any questions, technical or otherwise.
And if I can, before we turn over to board discussion, just to kind of finish the staff perspective. You know, the district has long grappled with the kind of the lore of the value of return flows from agriculture, right? Ag in Western Colorado is frequently under fire for flood irrigation practices and other irrigation practices, and accused of really wasting water in its application to water. I think we identified quite some time ago the need to develop data to look at and really truly understand the benefits, the detriments of return flow. When does it actually make it back into the river system? Does it contribute to lake flows in the high mountain streams? How much of it is there? All of those issues. It's why we sponsored the White River return flow study. Different methodology, much more simple approach. This approach is complex, science-driven. I too, like Melissa, learned about end member mixing in reviewing this, and someday we'll understand it. But I do think it's really a useful opportunity to look at those return flows from a different angle and collect different data. Understanding it's a site-specific study, so it's not one that will be readily available for broad application. But I think developing that body of science around ag return flows in the mountains of Colorado will assist our district in understanding the value of return flows and hopefully assist our communities and the broader Colorado River community on the value of that return flow and the benefits it provides. So that's why I think staff is coming to you, making a recommendation, which admittedly is a lot of money for a study that is not a huge geographic area, but that's why we would recommend it as a staff. So I with that in mind, want you to have that discussion.
Scott?
So first of all, I like the project, but I look at the USGS and it's got a little asterisk by it, says it's preliminarily committed, kind of like Shoshone Forest. So I'm wondering, what if that doesn't come through? Considering a little political threat, if Colorado's involved right now, it seems that they're looking for projects in Colorado to kill. So what's the backup?
Sure.
Our board, we have reserve funding, so if something were to happen that USGS couldn't contribute their portion, we would dip into our reserves to be able to fund the project.
650,000.
It does appear to me that someone from USGS, the name says Rachel Gidley, but there appears also to be a gentleman, so I don't want to, if you would like to speak, can we get them up on the screen somehow? Can you take it? There we go.
Hi, so I'm Corey Williams. I'm the investigations chief for Western Colorado and the basic coordinator for the Upper Colorado Integrated Water Science Program. Indications right now for both the directed and cooperative matching funds from USGS are that those are likely to be firm funding. That the asterisk is there. It's a part of all of our standard agreements because we work at that money comes from Congress, and so we can't speak towards those until we have budget commitments for a given year or for multiple years. But all indications are that that is well supported by Congress and that the Colorado River in general is an important area that they're investing in.
And if I understood Sonia correctly, the Upper Gunnison is poised to step in. I think our funding would be just contingent on the matching funding being there before we fund it. And Scott, that is how we do all of our grants. We don't start funding things until we know that the matching funds are committed.
I just like to reaffirm it on every project.
I know. We've had this discussion.
It's your job, Scott.
Carrie?
I have a question about the timeframe of the proposed timeframe of the study. Is it going to be flexible? Is it going to be multi-year? Is one little change in ditch operations, hydrology, soil moisture, temperature could, be an anomaly, provide a much different outcome depending on a whole series of variables. So what's the plan?
So it's a 5-year study, right, started in 2024. We were hoping to capture different hydrology and stuff like, with the water users, it's go on with business as normal and then measure the groundwater surface water interaction and changes. And try to get a better idea of how the system behaves, but I'll let Kim Corey respond to with regard to how these changes could impact the science.
That's good.
Corey, did you hear that?
Yes, I did. So again, the approach to the overall study design was for a robust data collection effort to be used to calibrate the two different individual models. And so variability between years, because we have those in place, is something that enriches the data used to understand the certainty of conditions within the basin. So it's not necessarily that we're counting on any set years, but that we're prepared to adjust based on the years that we're given. The upper basin, you never know what you're going to get as far as snowpack runoff and diversions. And so our study includes designs to represent that, as well as we've completed a publication that outlines using historical record within the East River between known points, looking at mass balance and calculations. So we've looked at a broader time period than just the data collection aspect of this project.
Great, thank you.
Well,
I like the effort to go into this and up in the Yampa, probably about 10 years ago, a roundtable funded a return flow study through CSU. And we didn't spend this kind of money, but we did get some state money to help fund it. And what we came to a conclusion and the report, which is on the roundtable's website, is that in the Yampa Basin, we can confidently say 30% of the flow of the river in August is due to return flows. But any further going into that is site specific. And it's so site specific based on soil conditions or soil types, distance from the river, all of the things we instinctively know, which would have cost, to map the whole Yampa Valley would have cost, more money than our federal debt probably. But so in the analysis by staff, I kind of heard, well, we recommend this because we think it could be replicated or used for return flow analysis in other basins or other areas. And so my question, it isn't whether or not I'm going to vote for your request here. It's more bigger because, as Andy outlined, we've been wrestling with this return flow issue for many years. I first heard that, and then after some more of the answers, I'm hearing that no, it's only specific to the 8 mile stretch of river. It probably can't be extrapolated out for any beneficial use anywhere else. Is that pretty much accurate?
No, I think, I'm sorry if this wasn't clear. Essentially, we were saying, there's different types of approaches to understanding return flow. And we want to provide our communities with an option of different types and avenues they can go down to conduct similar studies. But they cannot take this study specifically and transplant it to their basin.
I might add, and Caleb may want to add to this too. Part of our staff recommendation also looks at the different scales that this research could be used for, one of which is helping to inform basin-specific decisions on a whole variety of water uses and irrigation practices, and help inform that local body of knowledge, like you said, Director Gray, that is fairly site-specific. Another interest of ours, like Andy mentioned, is how do we continue to build our body of knowledge for these larger Colorado River Basin-wide efforts? And so when we look at conserved consumptive use programs, what could that do to an area of high elevation production? Continuing to build our body of knowledge that we talked about yesterday. We have a significant body of research that's our own policy positions and CFP funded research, so that we can come equipped to conversations about broader conservation programs with data across different areas of our district. And so from our staff recommendation, I just wanted to add, our interest is really understanding this body of work at different scales, where it can support local decisions at the watershed level, support decisions that the River District might be making on future policy efforts. And that has informed our position here. the way that it can't be picked up and used is exactly like Melissa said. It helps give different communities examples of how you could approach this issue. Caleb, I don't know if you have anything else to add.
No, I think you covered it really well, Amy. I think it's, this project is is to create a really robust model that's just going to be another tool in the tool belt, to make these, have the data to allow our constituents to make these decisions without actually having to go through the actual practice of fallowing a field to see what it does to the stream. I think that's incredibly valuable information as we move forward.
So that was what you said, Amy, is the root of my question. As we talked yesterday about possibilities in Big River issues and whether there is a conserved consumptive use program floated permanently in the upper basin, that we need to be able to figure out what injury that is to everybody else when someone participates in that program. And is there any way to even add to this, what we're doing here, to even more of that kind of information? Because I think as a district, while I'm at least certainly willing to help fund something that specific to this project in that 8-mile stretch, I'd even be more on board even if it was more money, if it could help us with this bigger problem that we're wrestling with. And my question, is there any way to do that?
Director Gray, that's a great point, and it's certainly what we had our eye on the ball looking at this project. One of the recommendations we had at the staff level that we worked with Director Chavez was to have Caleb participate as part of the technical advisory committee on this project to both lend our insight into these types of studies across our district, but also lend our insight into how this study could be useful in an applied manner on a variety of different decision points that we're wrestling with as a district.
And I think also, Director Gray, like part of the study includes starting to collect some preliminary data in the Ohio Creek Basin and the Tameti Creek Basin, our other high ag use areas, because we do want to take this model, knowing it's not going to be perfect. You can't just put it in another basin, but looking at the geology and the soils and the way they hold water, how long it takes those return flows to come back to the system. What are the short and long-term impacts associated with potential compact administration or changes in the way we use water on those groundwater levels? Does it take 10 years to recover?
Yeah.
Will it take 5? Does it bounce back quickly, slowly? What are those longer term impacts if we start doing this in this future, destroy our future? So.
Jen,
Yeah, thank you. I think this is really an exciting project, and it feels like if the River District and all the water use slope can get enough of these studies underway with all of those variables identified, that maybe it's a job for AI to say, all right, here's a new basin, here's all the variables here, what's your, it sort of creates a model. So you can't move from one basin to another and say it's going to be the same because the rocks are different and everything else. But it feels like we are investing in developing that base of knowledge, and it may go, I mean, with all the new tools and technology, they're using it for avalanche forecasting, and it's being much more successful than just site specific. It just feels like an exciting addition to a body of knowledge that will have some specific benefits for Upper Gunnison, but maybe some broader benefits for the whole Western Slope.
I agree with that, Kathy. In fact, thanks for putting it to words. I was thinking of in the model as a very elementary, I'm sure, example. If you're in river gravel cobble and you're half a mile from the river, if you do the monitoring wells and you say, in this type of material, it takes a week for the water to get back to the river, and you have a bunch of those kind of data, then maybe it could be extrapolated out to another basin even, as long as the types of soils and so on and distance from the river and whatever, I don't know, were comparable, then maybe we could begin to use that when we start these conserved consumptive use projects.
Right.
So, okay.
Mark? So,
Wait a second. One of the people on,
Corey has a.
okay.
Corey, do you have
You're
a?
on Zoom, go ahead.
Yeah, if I could just interject a little bit more. The USGS's mission is also more broad than just the East River. This project integrates with a regional water availability assessment that's funded directly by Congress for the Upper Colorado River and a number of other locations nationally. And so the methodologies developed within this, not only the local results, but the methodologies will highlight applications in other basins. And so the intention is we're putting USGS efforts in connection with the Next Generation Water Observing System and these larger programs to learn what works best to help further this science regionally. And so we'll make some of those connections, as mentioned, directly within this project. There's an intention within the scope of work for us to work with that technical advisory group and do outreach to promote what we're finding and how it may be applicable in other communities.
Great. Thank you.
So staff is recommending approval of the grant for $260,000 to the Upper Gunnison River Water Conservancy District. And seeking board approval here.
We needed a motion to accept the staff's recommendation.
I'll make that.
Second.
Tom Gray makes the motion, Vandenbrink seconds.
Can I have one more comment?
No, you already seconded.
Well, before you vote on it, this is really short. This is also gonna fuel, because the conversation that where I'm hearing coming from this is storing water underground, groundwater. And that's where this is gonna go. Because we're already having those conversations based upon what we come up with, and that's the logical next step, so.
Thank you. So we've got a motion on the floor. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say no. Motion passed.
Well,
Congratulations.
the record note that I just refrained from.
Yeah, recusal. And we had a recusal of Ms. Chavez. Please put that in the record.
Well, thank you so much. I think if we can move on to external affairs, hate to say this, we're ahead of the. Please keep us that way, external affairs, starting with information and outreach updates. Hi, this is Amy. Yes. Moment, we'll rejoin the Zoom here.
Last thing around.
So.
You're getting things in my car.
No, I didn't.
For us to be a part of that, to support that effort and alongside the always on efforts that we maintain through our regular cadence of EA work. So we can, are you sharing yet? Not yet.
Yeah.
Apologize for the technicals here. Additionally, in the last quarter, we hosted the annual seminar in Grand Junction on October 3rd. That was well received from attendance and content. Lindsay had a significant hand in helping organize that structure of the content of the seminar. And so we appreciate everyone who was able to attend and encourage their constituents to attend. And we felt like that was a very constructive, productive conversation at that event. Spurred a lot of interesting conversations out of it. So those are two of sort of the main pillars of work that we did in the last quarter of 2025. And as mentioned earlier this morning, we've structured the nature of the EA work in two primary categories, as outlined here. There's our strategic components, which include Shoshone efforts and post 2026 negotiations, big river conversations, things we label as crisis communications. However, we don't often have true crisis, luckily, but we do grapple with complex, sensitive topics that we take directive information from leadership and from our legal staff that we manage in a similar format that you would operate in a crisis communications method. And our always on components, which are what I think most of you and hopefully our residents of the district see on a regular basis. That's the videos, that's the news drop twice a week, that's events. So that is the always on drumbeat of the EA work that Lindsay and I and the broader team carry forward on an ongoing basis. So that's a little bit about the last quarter of 2025. Welcome any questions, but I'll pass it to Lindsay, if not, to look ahead a little bit.
Yeah, just a quick review. We did a lot of awesome things over 2025, a lot of great numbers in and around all the strategic work that we've been doing. Most of you are familiar with these types of events that we do. Over 1,000 attendees between State of the River and our annual seminar. It was a new high water mark for us on event attendance, which was excellent. Media continues to be interested in our stories. I don't know why. I mean, we're just talking about water, guys. Nothing's happening. We had 123 mentions of the Colorado River District in organic media, which is something. And then our 92 staff presentations. This is such a good indicator of the trust and respect that our staff has throughout our district. We are frequently invited to come and present, whether it's BOCCs, whether it's local groups talking about water, whether it's other groups hosting conferences or annual seminar type things. We make the list on a regular basis, and the EA team works to support that. So on that note, we are looking ahead to our State of the River meetings. Again, I appreciate all of the directors who were personally victimized by the 7:30 a.m. INO committee meeting this morning. Thank you for showing up and providing all the feedback that you did. It was really helpful for staff direction to kind of hear those concerns, suggestions, and nudges. Directors who were not present, this is a mostly complete list of the dates where we will be joining you in your communities. Some small changes may still occur. We'll do some direct outreach to all of you to make sure you're on your calendar, to ask you to share within your networks and your locally impactful groups to make sure that the people who need to be in the room are there. Our agendas this year are going to stay a little bit tighter, a little bit more in-house. We're going to lean heavily on our expert tech team, say, to do the updates on river levels, snowpack, hydrology, climate, all that kind of stuff, instead of outsourcing those. Since we are hosting 12, and we're trying to make sure that our staff capacity is at least managed to some extent. These are fantastic events. Many of you have attended in the past. We do like to make sure directors are named and mentioned. You are always welcome to introduce with remarks or join us in the podium at the beginning, or I can just point you out in the crowd and you can wave, depending on your level of comfort and where you want to be with you. So
we offer that you could even MC the entire event.
That's absolutely right.
Right? I
Please.
mean, let's just give everybody the opportunity.
Yep. So whatever level of participation you're comfortable in, we really appreciate. And
as we mentioned, if you have ideas for effective communication channels to get the word out in your community, please let us know those. We want to make sure we're talking to the people who need to be there. Gosh, so that was a really quick run through. I don't want to stand between you and lunch, but I think we're happy to get some thoughts of you.
Yeah, open up lots of opinions. We appreciate your help getting the word out about the state of the rivers.
How did our attendance at this annual seminar compare to previous years?
It was second highest. So the first highest was, I think, 2020, when we just had a bunch of releases for Blue Mesa and everyone was panicking about drought again. But it was really good. So it was 340 in the room. So, yeah.
I have a question on the state of the river. I was around when there were like 10 people attending. What's the average attendance for some of our state of the river meetings?
It varies a lot depending on the size of the community. But right now we're seeing between 50 and 130. So, yeah, it can vary, but that's where they usually.
And some of that is the size of the community, but the last time we did one in Ridgeway, we had 90 people there.
That's right,
And-
yeah.
And we went up to Steamboat last year and we didn't have anywhere near that number. And in the past, we've had close to 200 in Steamboat and far fewer in Ridgeway, so.
We'll have to compete with St. Patrick's Day this year, so it either could be really rowdy or.
I can just say on St. Patrick's Day, can we get a beer sponsor to help us bring some people in?
Careful what you would.
I
Well, maybe you turn the river-
I know those ne'er-do-wells down there. I think that we can bring them in. I need,
How about a Green River?
Green River, there you go.
But it makes a big difference when we have local assistants getting the word out. We do some promotional efforts online and in local newspapers, but that word of mouth and making sure it's on people's local calendars, and we do our best to try to find our way onto the local event calendars and all those things, but the on the ground, there's no replacement for it. So we'll be sure to send out a little media kit to include logos, if you have newsletters, if you have groups that you're a part of that you could share this information with. It's all appreciated. It really helps buoy those numbers and awareness.
Well, thank you. These guys are doing a great job and I would just say that the two of them do a phenomenal job with quite a bit of help from Amy. But also help from our entire tech team and our CFP team. And I don't know if the legal team actually does anything, but the admin team does quite a bit. So,
Yeah.
actually, we have a remarkable team that I think you can tap anyone on our team to speak publicly and they do an amazing job. So, excellent. You all are phenomenal at coordinating those efforts.
Thanks.
Appreciate it. And I appreciate the direction.
Okay.
To the time.
All right.
We'll be great to this done. Don't worry.
Okay.
All right. If we could turn it over to Zane Kessler, State Affairs.
It's the Andy Miller effect in Rich Way.
They all thought I went to jail, but I'm actually up here hiding.
I'd like to start by thanking the legal team for their hard work and the citizens policy side of our efforts. I got your back. So, no, thank you all. First, I should apologize for missing the meeting yesterday. I had a family emergency to deal with, but I'm glad to be back today and be with you all. So I have some catching up to do. It sounds like we had some robust conversations yesterday. But I will start with our state affairs updates. You have a memo in your packet that gives a pretty comprehensive overview of where things stand at the legislature. I did send you an email last night with 2 bills for your possible action today. Before we get into those, I'll just highlight that we're dealing with this largely the same political makeup that we've dealt with in the past few years at the state capitol. Majorities in the governor's office, both chambers of the legislature, 43-22 majority in the House and a 23-12 majority in the Senate. This is going to be a high noise, high constraint session, constrained largely by budget. Both a fiscal deficit or a fiscal budget hole anticipated for the coming year. And also a hole that remains to be filled that grew larger after the special session last spring or summer. So the budget writers at the Capitol are going to really have a tough time this year. And I think on top of those constraints, it's an election year. We have seen significant leadership turnover, multiple lame duck leaders in the governor and speaker of the House. And as I said, an exceptionally tight budget environment. So against that backdrop, water legislation is not currently driving the agenda, but I think we at the staff level and in the water community writ large understand that some of those fiscal decisions being made this session may have downstream impacts on water funding, state agency capacity, and local government resources. And so just because it may be a slow water year by way of water bills, there are a number of things we're going to have to keep our eyes on and remain vigilant in order to try to minimize any potential damage to the resources that we depend on within the water community. Not a whole lot of change in committee structure. We still are thankful to have Senator Roberts chairing the Senate Ag Committee. Representative McCormick will chair the House Ag Committee again, and I'm thankful to have her as a Front Range representative who has been very attentive to our needs on the Western Slope, a vocal champion of Shoshone efforts, and the line is always open with her. And so I would say for those of us on the Western Slope, we're lucky to have the committee makeup that we have. In my memo, I noted that no water bills were referred this year by the Water Resources and Agricultural Review Committee. There are a handful of informal draft concepts circulating, but we're not, as I alluded to a moment ago, we're not seeing a heavy water legislation agenda. A few of the things that we are keeping an eye on and that I expect may break and see introduction in the coming weeks, if not maybe late session bills. It's around issues such as beaver management and wetland protection, stream access, revegetation standards for the lower Arkansas Basin, DNR regulatory authority issues, and one issue that definitely has a water nexus is that, and it's becoming quickly, I think, a focal point, is energy planning and data management, or sorry, data center management. That's not something we've strayed into. It's not an issue that we've been involved in the past, but to the extent that there are proposals that will increase consumptive uses on the Front Range, I think that the River District should be at the table and should be a part of those conversations. I think we're also going to deal with a conversation around state response to federal funding retrenchment. How do we fill a gap that ultimately may not, we don't have the capacity to fill the entire hole left by the federal government in many ways, but we're going to have to be smart and nimble from a budgetary perspective. I would like to ask that the board reestablish your biweekly meeting calendar during the legislative session. That would put our first meeting at 2 weeks from tomorrow. Stephanie, I believe, has already calendared that for you. No, not yet. You'll have a calendar invite coming soon, but those meetings are Thursday, noon to 1 in the past, if the board chooses to keep that schedule. Obviously, it's of critical importance for me and for the policy team in getting your input and your direction and your formal positions on bills at the Capitol. So we also, to the extent that people are listening online, welcome the public, welcome county commissioners, elected officials, and others to be a part of those calls. I think we as a district and this board, your decisions are better informed when we have members of the public engaging on issues that are important to them and bills that are important to them. So unless there are questions related to the memo, I will get into the two bills that I've circulated for consideration and possible action. Questions there? The first bill for your consideration today is House Bill 26-1034. This is really a belt and suspenders fix to some water sense legislation that passed in 2023. That legislation was House Bill 23-1161, which established environmental standards for irrigation controllers and sprinkler bodies. This fix would repeal the environmental standard for irrigation controllers so that spray sprinklers, we're talking largely landscaping and residential sprinklers, no longer require the spray sprinkler bodies to include a check valve. That apparently, according to the Colorado Irrigators Association and the Association of Landscape Contractors, has created some undue burden on the industry without a whole lot of evidence of water savings. And so this bill is brought to you by Representatives Johnson and Lukens and Senator Rod Pelton. Really seems non-controversial. I've had a handful of conversations with legislators on this, and again, belt and suspenders, going back to try and fix some unintended consequences from that 2023 legislation. Staff's recommendation to the board is that we support this bill.
So is this like, for lack of terms, is this the end gun?
Is that, sorry?
Would that be the end gun on the sprinkler?
It's check valves related to the actual sprinkler head, as I understand it. There was a requirement in the water sense legislation that they include check valves. That's a step that other states have not taken in implementing water sense legislation. But it would have removed the requirement that these have a check valve within the system, not at where your water comes out, prevent freezing, but within the system itself.
Relative to those that are tied to domestic systems and municipal supply.
Do you want to do these separately, or you want to do the two together? How do you-
I'll take action individually if the board's willing.
I'll move staff recommendation.
Henry, second is Robert? Yeah. Got a motion on the floor. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passed with support.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, board. Second bill for your consideration is not a bill, it's a joint resolution as it is every year. This is the water projects eligibility list. Codifying the approval list for the revolving loan funds administered by the Colorado Water and Power Development Authority. There are a handful of Western Slope projects, municipalities that are seeking loan funding for this this year. To my knowledge, the River District has never opposed this bill. We've always supported it, although, as I said in my email to you last night, it doesn't require a lot from staff to ensure its passage. But I am recommending, staff recommends that we support this bill. It is up for its first hearing next week in the Senate Ag Committee with Senator Catlin and others. Staff recommendation is
Move staff recommendation.
Whoever makes motion, who second?
Second.
Second Macy's. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? With support.
Thank you. I'm not sure if they were online. We're a little ahead of schedule, but I did want to note before we wrap up state affairs that we will have the continuing services of Gail Berry and Chris Vodapol as eyes and ears at the Capitol for us this year. This will be sadly Gail's last session with us. She's worked with us for 7 going on 8 sessions now, but she's chosen to retire and play some golf. And I can't argue with that decision, but she will be missed. And so staff with River District leadership will be talking with our other contractor, Chris Vodapol, and others about how we fill the gap left by Gail. Gail's expertise in the budget arena is unparalleled. And she, as a former member of the Joint Budget Committee, has done a lot to help us out over the years. And so I'll miss working with her, but she will be around the rest of this session, and I'm sure she'll be on some of our biweekly calls as well. And Chris Vodapal will continue to work with us and does an excellent job keeping us informed of what's happening in the lobby and in individual conversations when I and others from the district are not able to be involved. So wanted you all to be aware of that.
Chris is on, Gail is not.
Okay. Well, I think with that, we'll move quickly to federal affairs. Again, you have a more detailed memo in your packet, but really, I think the story of the last quarter at the federal level was one of, a historic government shutdown that rippled through back to state affairs. And that was something I'll touch on, is our budget writers and our economic analysts at the state were very clear in their December forecasts that they're flying blind in some ways because the Bureau of Labor Statistics and other data that we rely on at the state to form our budget in advance, there's just a big black hole there. And so I don't want to lose sight of how federal government shutdown, a complete shutdown, can affect other areas of government as well, not just at the federal level. But that 43-day shutdown did come to a close with the passage of a 3-bill minibus. We're not allowed to say or pursue omnibuses anymore, going with minibus. I think the most important income or outcome for that 3-bill minibus was the Agriculture and FDA Appropriations Bill, one of the 3 bills that was part of that package. It rejected most of the Trump administration's proposed cuts. It preserved nearly $1 billion in USDA conservation programs that we rely on extensively. That conservation title of the Farm Bill is very important to our water users throughout the Western Slope. And it maintained funding for irrigation modernization, watershed rehabilitation, and working lands assistance. It also extended, some may say extended, some may say kicked the can down the road on a full Farm Bill reauthorization. So the Farm Bill that has stood for 6 years now and been extended twice is now being extended again. And so we're operating with status quo on the Farm Bill. It does reduce some of the uncertainty that was presented by what they were calling a skinny Farm Bill, which we were expecting to try and debate in Congress this month and next. And essentially gives us a year to try to pursue, for Congress to try to pursue the full reauthorization or full authorization of a new Farm Bill in 2026. So I think executive branch updates that I would point to that are in your memo are the new WOTUS rule. EPA and Army Corps have released a proposed rule aligning the Clean Water Act jurisdiction with the Supreme Court Sackett decision. The rule obviously narrows federal jurisdiction and aims to provide clarity for landowners and project proponents. But I don't think it will avoid some of the administrative ping pong we've seen with this. And as I noted in my email, I would expect, I'm not an expert on the subject, but I and others would expect that we'll probably see extensive litigation. And so there's also a Bureau of Reclamation Secretarial Order 3446, which expanded opportunities for local districts and contractors with the Bureau to manage federally funded water projects. That has been a big priority for some of the federal water advocacy groups, including Family Farm Alliance and the National Water Resources Association. I think supporters argue this could shorten timelines, reduce costs, and critics have raised concerns about oversight and environmental reviews. But we'll see how it shakes out. And then I had to do a somewhat last minute update to your memo that highlighted a second minibus. Congress had struggled with passing the remaining FY26 spending bills. But in early January, after Congress returned from their holiday recess, a bipartisan compromise package was released that preserves many of the key Bureau reclamation programs, including WaterSmart. Although the Bureau does take a haircut, it did not completely zero out WaterSmart, which was a proposal within the president's budget proposal. It provides just under 1.5 billion for reclamation. Again, down overall, but well above the president's request for priority programs. And so I think my key takeaway from the two minibuses that have passed thus far is you're seeing an appetite for Congress or from Congress to preserve many of the Western water priorities that we all those priorities that we share. They are taking haircuts, they're not zeroed out. And it's also shown a little bit of a counterbalance to this administration, which has been pretty dominant on the legislative front. There were two noteworthy vetoes of non-controversial water bills, including the Arkansas Valley Conduit, a longstanding non-controversial water project in the Pueblo area. I guess beyond that, congressional action, you should note that in your memo, I give an overview of the SPEED Act, which was the House Natural Resource Committee Chairman's priority for NEPA reform. That it has passed out of the House and we're seeing debate in the Senate on it. And then lastly, as a part of that first minibus I mentioned earlier, Congress did temporarily remove income and payment caps for EQIP and CSP. It expands eligibility to larger operations, corporate agricultural operations. It shifts some of the funding dynamics and will be a key farm bill issue as they try to negotiate a new farm bill. But it's, I think some would see the removal of those caps as a giveaway to big ag. There's been a good amount of criticism of that decision, but Congress did pass it and really kind of flipped those programs, at least the funding eligibility for those programs, on its head. I believe those caps have been in place for up to 40 years at this point. So a noteworthy development as it relates to some of the ag programs or USDA programs that many of our operators in the West rely on. So in closing on federal affairs, I think taken together, federal action this quarter reinforces the importance of our continued engagement. I think we are, we're in uncharted territory in some ways at the federal level, but it is good to see that Congress is working to protect some of our priorities. So we'll continue to engage. Thankful to Representative Hurd, Senators Bennett and Hickenlooper for having an open line of communication with us, and we'll continue to use that line. I'm not sure if you have questions about anything in your memo, but I'm happy to answer any of you.
Let's move on to policies.
Move on to policies. All right, I'm gonna need a minute to share my screen. Hey, Steph, could you help me try to share my screen? For some reason, it's not giving me an option on the Zoom. Oh, actually, here we go. Policies. All right. So, let's see if that's up on your screen. There we go. You have, 3 policies up for approval. Starting today, as a reminder, staff presents to the board roughly 1/3 of your policies each year. So that policies are up on a triennial basis for review and potential readoption. This year, the 3 policies in front of you are Colorado River compacts and entitlements, funding for water infrastructure and programs, interstate water marketing, and a 4th, Trans Mountain diversions. As a reminder, it is this board's policy to have a policy for review on your agenda twice before it is eligible for readoption or final amendments or changes. And so this is really the first pass with you all on this. So I think most of you are familiar with this process, so I'll just jump in. First policy is Colorado River compacts and entitlements. Staff did make some changes to the center of this policy statement, or to the middle of the policy statement, really clarifying some positions of the board. I will note that I relied on Peter and Andy, who are more active in the interstate conversations than I am, for their input on this, but there are some changes to the actual policy statement and nothing to the background and discussion section.
Those changes are the change that Zane is referring to there in blue, I guess, on the screen. It's red in the packet. And it's on page, for those of you who can't read the screen, it's on page 446 of your PDF. It really is just aimed at the noise being made by the lower basin and the federal government to require mandatory curtailment in the upper basin as part of a 7-state agreement. Our read of Colorado law and frankly, the Colorado state constitution is that the state has no authority to curtail except in the instance of a valid compact curtailment enacted by proper procedures at the Upper Colorado River Commission. So we just wanted to confirm that, clarify that. Seems like it's potentially getting a little closer to home, so thought we ought to sharpen up our policy on that. As Zane, I think, said, you can't adopt the policy today, but we can accept any kind of pointers or comments.
Yeah, if there's feedback from the board, requested changes that staff can go back and make and before we present it to you again next quarter, now is the time.
All right. Moving on.
Well, let me ask a question. You had a strike through paragraph and then the new language. What was changed? It doesn't seem like it changed that much, but maybe you had something in mind there.
Primary change there was to clarify the language a little bit with respect to the required finding by the UCRC regarding curtailment necessary to ensure compliance compact, and also that any administration within the state will implement it in a manner that's consistent with Colorado, which was not necessarily expressed in the prior version.
Makes sense.
Okay. Next policy, if there's no direct.
Alvin, did you have a question?
No, I got it answered. Let's put my glasses on and could read it.
I didn't want to pass you up.
Thank you.
Next policy in front of you today for your initial review is funding for water infrastructure and programs. There's one minor addition within the policy statement itself, and then there's an extensive reorganization and offering additional clarification, additional background in the background and discussion section. I think the purpose of those edits in background and discussion section are to align them more to some of the funding for water infrastructure and programs. Obviously focuses on both state and federal levels. There's been a lot that has occurred at the federal level since this policy was last readopted by this board, and also a lot that's occurred at the state level. And so thanks to Amy and the team for their help to kind of work through this, and hopefully, while confusing in red line format, the simple markup, I think, is a lot cleaner and more informative of the funding priorities we have at both levels, state and federal. Chavez has her hand up.
Same, what do you know about the future of severance tax and water funding task force? It says that the report would come out by January 15th. Did that come out?
I have not seen a report. I believe, is that next year?
I was just
Yeah,
looking
they're
at that,
currently
so,
meeting.
Director Chavez, the legislation requires the task force to submit a draft report by January 15th with a final report due by July 15th. We can make that clarification, but we have been tracking this. I have not seen a draft report yet as part of the listserv, but it was on my list to follow up.
Yeah, maybe just the.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, that's a staff error. I've gone in, if it's okay with this board, and changed that to July 15th for the final report. And I apologize that the track changes on what I'm sharing are showing up in different colors than what's in your packet. That's why Microsoft Word does that, but.
And Director Chavez, the Water Center, the Colorado Water Center from CSU has been the consultant selected to support this draft report, which is submitted to the Department of Natural Resources and the task force. So I assume it will be released publicly, but we'll have to follow up.
Okay. Have those meetings been public?
They have been public and they are recorded on and posted on a website that the Department of Natural Resources housed. So you can go back and look at those.
Thank you.
Any flags or feedback for the proposed changes or additions?
Saying on that page right there, the first green item, it says finally, times of strong budget conditions, the state of Colorado has.
Sorry, that's it. Due to the track changes, it continues on the next line, has made one-time
Oh, okay,
transfers from the
okay.
general fund to support the water plan and basin roundtables.
Thank you.
Question about that next paragraph. It talks about concerns about aging infrastructure needs. Do we need to add in there water infrastructure needs? Or is that vague?
Yeah, we can do that.
Is this an appropriate place? I don't even know if this is even applicable anymore. But severance tax used to go back and fund a whole bunch of this. Would this be a good place for us to kind of remind, to use that as kind of a mechanism that was once there, but not there? I mean, if there's a chance to reinstitute that severance tax, it sure would be nice to get that 220 some odd $1 million that was once upon a time in there that's now reappropriated everything else.
Swept.
I feel like we touched on that.
Because it's not just JJ and DD, it was their severance taxes already sitting there. That's what it's for, but it's just gone.
Commissioner Redmond would be happy with you for making that comment.
Thank you.
Question of his.
I'd be happy to go in and spend some time to try and reinforce that.
Well, that was actually a real impetus of what like the base roundtables and IBCC was set up for, was to really start doing big projects, and you can't do it anymore. Now you're not gonna get nothing.
Higher up in the background, we do discuss the
Thank you.
importance of severance tax, but I'm again happy to go in and add some meat to that.
Did you say you wanted the IBCC to do something?
What they're statutorily supposed to do.
Right.
Interesting concept.
Moving on to interstate water marketing. The primary change here is in the policy statement itself. With on the advice of the general manager and general counsel, staff's removed the second half of that first paragraph. Largely because it's staff's, I think, belief that, or concern that, I don't know that we would support interstate water marketing, even if it was the unanimous consent of all 7 states. And so, I honestly, thinking back and looking back at my notes, can't remember why or where that language came from. I think it was originally there when this was adopted in 2014 or earlier. No, sorry, this goes all the way back to 2005. And that language just persisted, and understanding what where the river district is at and where the 7 states conversations are at. I think it's staff's recommendation that we eliminate that and leave the first half of that paragraph to be pointed and correct.
Just for clarification, the opposition is to marketing between the upper basin and the lower basin, not necessarily to marketing between the states of the lower basin, which we have, if not encouraged, at least said, yeah, if that helps to solve your issues in the lower basin, go ahead and do that.
Thank you, Peter. Any other concerns or flags for the interstate water marketing policy? Director Dennison has his hand up.
Well, yeah, yes, thank you. Yesterday, we had a discussion brought up by Bruce about that decree that considered adding the beneficial use of compliance.
It was an executive session.
Oh, yeah, sorry. My bad. Just meant to say that.
Okay.
It's been considered in other places. We've talked about it. It seems as though, and I've heard this from other folks that have said this needs to be done for shepherding reasons. My concern has always been that if I were to conserve water and it were to flow downstream, I want to make sure that it's held for the benefit of the state of Colorado. I think others share that concern. Is there any reason to think about that in terms of policy, or to add pressure to folks that might be considering this? Because it seems like we might have a gap there of how we manage those waters.
And I think that there's a, sorry, I don't mean to jump in on responding, but the distinction I see in the situation that I think you're talking about would be where if the consumptive use type program within Colorado and water being used, Colorado water being used to facilitate a conserved consumptive use program for the benefit of the upper basin versus the marketing of water from use in Colorado to use in another state for the consumptive use in that state. I think this is intended primarily, if not exclusively, to address the latter circumstance, not the circumstance that you're talking about.
Absolutely right. Yeah. Thank you.
The last policy for your initial review this quarter is the Trans Mountain Water Diversions Policy. One, I think, important addition to the policy statement in the first paragraph is the addition of drought and outdoor watering restrictions on the Front Range. I think was a point of discussion during the recent CWCB hearings on Shoshone, and something we've seen in recent years. The limited or lack of meaningful drought restrictions in many areas of the Front Range. And so staff did drop that in and would suggest that that be in addition to the current policy statement.
At the risk of being too radical here, unmitigated growth isn't really primarily the issue. For range, I mean.
One concept.
I guess the question, growth isn't mentioned at all. Is that intentional?
I don't know that it is not intentional. It's this board's purview. If you believe that that belongs in this policy, then that staff will take your direction.
Well, I don't think there's much we can do about other communities' growth policies and those kind of things. They may be limited by the amount of water that they can mount and transfer. They'll have to realize that on their own. I don't think we'll be able to say to them, well, we're not sending it anymore if they've got the rights to it. So, yeah, I'd like to see, they need to pave a stripe out in the prairie and say, we won't grow past this spot. But that's not gonna happen. I don't think.
One way to
pushing
skin
that
that
list down.
cat might be to include reference to updated land use policies.
I think that would be great. I mean, I think we were talking about this earlier in reference, it's always brought up in reference to the lower basin states and the unmitigated growth that basically places the demands on our system. And, we were talking a little bit earlier about the intersection between land use policies and water, which, is a little bit misaligned sometimes.
This issue came front and center in discussions Peter and I had with the Front Range over Trans Mountain diversions and Shoshone and the relationship between them. And, our point there and publicly at the CWCB hearing in November was that, look, we're not going to tell you how to grow, but you don't get to grow and then say, oh my gosh, we don't have water. We need more water out of the Colorado River. And that's really what the request of the Front Range was very clearly could be distilled down in the four entities that were there is, oh gee, there may be some time in the future where we need more water because we're in a drought, completely disconnected in their minds from the fact that they've grown uncontrollably and that they didn't want us to co-manage the water right because they wanted the state body to be susceptible to political pressure to turn off the Shoshone call so they could then provide more water during dry years to their growth that they didn't adequately provide water for. And so we were successful in that co-management effort, but it is front and center in those conversations. It needs to be. And Zane alluded to an issue that I do think, I guess I have a question for this board, if you'd like us to work it into this policy. Data centers, chip plants, okay? Well, two different things, but both require a tremendous amount of water. I've been very vocal about the fact that chip plants and data centers in the greater Phoenix area are a terrible place to put them, right? This is a construction of water-heavy industries in an area that relies upon a junior right on the Colorado River, which we are already hearing from the state of Arizona that is a national defense issue and that they must be allowed to continue to take their water, even though they are a union right. And their representative, their governor, or their director of Arizona Department of Water Resources and their governor have articulated that very clearly that is a national defense issue. We hear the same thing. There are chip plants. There's one in Colorado Springs today. There's another one being cited. Colorado Springs gets 70% of its water on junior post-compact water rights out of the Colorado River. There are data centers popping up all over the Front Range. Just to point out, one just outside of Greeley that was a large piece of land next to some water world development that if you ever go out there, all the streets are named after beaches and coasts and things. A huge tract of land that has not been developed right next to that water world has just been purchased by the largest data center developer in the country, right? And they are talking about mega data centers, right? And these things require a tremendous amount of water to cool. Almost all of them are cooled with evaporative cooling. And, you know, the question in my mind is, where does that come from? And in a place like that, 50 or 60 or 70% of that water comes out of the Colorado River. We will hear when curtailment comes, when shortages come, that this is a national defense issue. This is a public health, safety and welfare. They have to get their water. And, oh, Mr. Catlin, your farm shouldn't have water, and either should yours or yours, Mark, or anybody else's, right? And that's, so is this a place to work that issue specifically into our policies? Because it isn't, when this policy was first written in 2000, data centers and chip plants weren't an issue. And so I'm asking the board your thoughts on that. Sorry, Zan, I'm creating work for you.
I would just, before the board chimes in, I would remind you all that former Director Monger had brought this up at your last quarterly meeting and posed the question of whether or not our board needs a policy on data centers or water intensive industrial uses. So I just present that fact before you discuss.
Yeah, I think we should include it somewhere or maybe multiple places. I think it's bigger than just Trans Mountain diversions because it also gets to the lower basin, and we probably don't want a data center in Rifle either. So I feel like we should include it as a deep water draw, but I'm not sure where it goes. Maybe it goes everywhere.
Yes, ma'am.
So I'm glad to hear that Doug brought that up because and I think Zane's suggestion of including something in this language about the Trans Mountain diversions or related to land use policy might address data centers also. In Routt County, we have specifically disallowed them in our land use code for the reasons that you described and others related to grid reliability and strain that we just cannot accept or handle. So, I mean, maybe rather than specifically calling out growth as in population growth or data centers as data centers, we talk about land use policies, which really would drive the way that each community manages those things on their own.
I did hear a comprehensive story on NPR about new technology for cooling data centers, which doesn't use so much water. Just not that I don't think we should include this. I think we should. I think data centers should be in Georgia or somewhere, but it just has a slightly bright note. A dim bright note.
Jerry?
Yeah, I think it's easy to point the finger at data centers and say, you know, it's hottest topic, but that kind of growth, there's all sorts of different industry that uses a lot of water, and being limiting to one industry is short-sighted. It could be something else in a few months, or it could be some other.
The large bottling plant that PepsiCo is now developing in Colorado or in Pueblo based on Colorado water availability instead of in Denver, for instance.
Yeah.
Water intensive, yeah.
Is this also a place where, on a potential compact call, that we need to put, something in terms of sharing the burden? I know it's probably in other policies, but is it one that should also go here with the Trans Mountain water diversions? Possibly.
Essentially.
Staff can take a snap at that. Why don't we go back, try to spell in some of these things that you've discussed and bring it back to you in April for review and potential revisions that you have 4 quarterly meetings, including this one to get it done. So
I would say, I mean, I think that it's probably inappropriate for us to say how communities should grow outside of our district. For them to grow and then expect to get the water from the Colorado River is appropriate for us to do. And so that's, I think you know, if they choose to transform their own water use that they already have being consumed by a different sector, and they want to transform it, that's really up to those communities. I think that we just need to be focused.
Has this national defense argument been used so far, or is it?
Oh, yeah, it's in multiple conversations about how the Colorado River should be divided, and literally the Central Arizona Project has said, you can't cut us. This is a matter of national defense. And by the way, Colorado Big Thompson Project, the diversions from Colorado Springs, both of which supply water to chip plants, we're gonna hear the same thing if we ever get into a compact cartel situation. And under our state's constitution, interestingly enough, municipal or domestic water, as it was referred to, has a preference, right? And that preference allows the acquisition of water from agriculture for through eminent domain. The next in line is ag, and then after that is in industry. So the question in my mind is, without amending our constitution, can they flip that priority on its head under a national defense argument? Because, right, you know,
Well, I think we've seen that happening in almost every decision coming out of Washington.
Yeah.
So I would expect that they could.
I would expect they would try,
Yeah.
right? I mean, this depends on who's in the black robes, the 9 black robes at the time.
Was sort of pawing through some of the river district's existing other policies, the ones that aren't up for discussion. I think some of these concepts are addressed to some extent, although maybe not to the extent contemplated by current discussion in the Colorado Water Plan policy that you readopted last April. Doesn't mean you can't reconsider any additional changes to that. And so we might take a look at that on staff level between now and your April quarterly meeting. See if that works to address any of the concepts that have been discussed. It's possible that there are other provisions in the compact policy as well that might be applicable. Okay.
That's it.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Your input.
All right. Our future meetings are outlined on the last page of your agenda. They include all the states of the river. They do not include the bi-weekly or bi-monthly report or Zoom calls. We'll get those set up and get calendar index out to everybody on those. We'll see some of you at Water Congress, which I think is next week. All right, well, in beautiful, lovely Aurora, right across the street from some of the most important hospitals in the state. So, according to Aurora, their hospitals are more important than ours when it comes to water consumption.
Everything, money consumption.
Anyway, I do want to just point out our budget workshop and annual seminar have been moved a little bit earlier than we have historically had them. They're September 10th and 11th. Had to do with the availability of the location that we like to have it at CMU, as well as a Colorado River symposium that several of us attend. It's an invitation only thing held by some called an entity called the Water Education Foundation, which is based in Sacramento. The reason I'm bringing this up is I forgot to mention that I was recently asked to be on the board of directors for the Water Education Foundation. They have historically only had California-based directors, and they are expanding it out to include the Colorado River Basin. I was asked to be on it. I accepted. I probably should have accepted it, subject to your approval, but I just accepted it. So, I'm on there. It's just one of our efforts in helping, in working with the folks within the business. It is. So that's why we're a little bit early. Just wanted to flag that for people planning trips out of the country or out of the state, that is a slightly earlier date.
They might be trying to convince you of something.
They might. I don't know if you've noticed. It's unlikely they will.
Yeah, but once they put their hooks in you, man, watch out. Better be on alert.
All right. Well, Thank you so much, everybody, for being here. We really appreciate it. And there is lunch there. You're welcome to eat it here or take it and eat it while you drive home. Thank you.
So we'll be adjourned. Thanks, guys.
I won't be able to be